This is your ultimate guide to visiting New York. We'll show you the coolest places to explore, mistakes you'll want to avoid, and tips for riding the subway like a pro. Let's get started. There are 3 things you absolutely need to know before arriving, starting with checking the weather. We have had such wild weather swings the last few years. Unless it's peak summer, you never know what you're gonna get here. I definitely pack an umbrella and possible extra layers even when it's hot because the air conditioning blasts here, and for winter, check the weekly forecast before you arrive to see just how cold you need to pack for. Bring some cash. New York is not like London, where I didn't touch cash the entire trip. At little pizza shops, in Chinatown, there are still cash-only places, and even in small delis and supermarkets, I have seen minimums of $10 to use a credit card, so carrying at least $50 to $100 in cash is never a bad idea here. Stay alert. While New York is one of the safest large cities in America, the city still has issues with mental illness and drug use, so always be aware of your surroundings, especially when riding the subway. We'll keep this simple and concentrate your first day in Midtown Manhattan, the heartbeat of the city. For breakfast, a classic American experience at the TikTok Diner, right across from Penn Station. You've probably seen this spot in movies. It's the classic American diner. Open 24 hours a day, this place serves up some seriously massive plates of pancakes and French toast. You could easily split one of these between 2 people. Breakfast starts at just $9.95 for 2 eggs any style, and prices go up to around $20 for some of the bigger dishes. It's a Midtown staple and a total viewer favorite. After you finish, there's a little hidden gem in the basement of the New Yorker Hotel next door, a tiny museum dedicated to Nikola Tesla. It's only worth about 5 minutes, but definitely check it out. It's where the famous inventor spent the last years of his life. You're less than a 10-minute walk to Bryant Park. From late October to early March, this place transforms into the Winter Village, hands down the best holiday market in the city, but even when it's not the holiday season, it's still one of my favorite parks to just chill. Perfect spot to relax at a table, people watch, and soak in that classic New York vibe. Oh, and here's a little bonus. It's got the cleanest public restroom in the Big Apple. You could practically eat off the floor in there. Right next to Bryant Park is the New York Public Library, and honestly, this might be one of the best free things to do in the city. My wife and I love exploring this place. Between the reading rooms and the stunning hallways, it feels like you're walking through a free museum. And speaking of museums, the Polanski exhibition on the ground floor is like its own mini museum. You can see the original Winnie the Pooh, the Declaration of Independence, and so much more on display. And that's just the beginning. You could easily spend 30 minutes here just soaking it all in. At this point, it's time you experience one of the city's best tourist attractions, an observation deck. For first-timers, my favorite observation deck is definitely Top of the Rock. If you're looking for stunning views on a beautiful day, this is the spot. At 70 floors up, it's the most intimate observation deck, putting you right in the heart of Midtown Manhattan. Plus, with tickets starting at just $40, it's one of the best value options out there. And don't miss their newest attractions, Beam and Skylift. Beam lets you feel what it was like to be a construction worker on lunch break, and it's a little scary if you're afraid of heights. Fair warning. After taking in the views, head over to Grand Central Terminal, New York's most beautiful transit hub. Snap some iconic shots in the main hall featuring the breathtaking celestial ceiling mural. Then take a quick detour next door to the Ford Atrium Garden. Hidden gem alert. This massive greenhouse maintains tropical conditions for plants to flourish year-round, with real rainwater collected straight from the roof. It's the perfect peaceful escape in the middle of the city. For lunch, you're eating the most iconic sandwich in New York, pastrami on rye with mustard. Sarge's Deli has won every contest we've ever had, comparing it to Katz's and all the other heavyweights. And it's not swarmed with tourists either. Nope, this is a local spot. This would be a moment to consider splitting one for 2 people, especially if you had a big breakfast at the diner. The pastrami is juicy and you'll leave satisfied. That I can promise you. After lunch, Uber or Subway up to Central Park. Start at 59th Street and Columbus Circle. You could easily spend an entire afternoon exploring Central Park. Trust me, I've done it. It stretches over 50 blocks. But as a first-timer, you really only need to soak in a few key spots. Start with Sheep Meadow for stunning skyline views over the lawn. Then head over to Bethesda Terrace, walk through the arcade to admire the beautiful archways and the world's only ceiling made entirely of Minton tiles. Don't miss the fountain and nearby pond, always always a peaceful sight. If you're short on time, I filmed a Central Park guide recently that shows how to see the best of the park in just 2 hours. Check that one out for more ideas. The American Museum of Natural History is a must for any visitor, and their new Gilder Center is a game changer, especially for families. Opened less than 2 years ago, this stunning addition features immersive exhibits that bring science and nature to life. Kids will love the Invisible Worlds exhibit, a mind-blowing interactive experience, and the impressive butterfly vivarium where you can walk among hundreds of live butterflies. Plus, the museum's iconic dinosaur fossils and massive blue whale model make it one of the coolest spots to explore in NYC. All right, it's time to go rest up and head back to Midtown for dinner. We'll be at John's of Times Square. This isn't just any pizza spot. It's the only one set inside a stunning old church located just a few blocks from Times Square. It's the perfect stop if you've got plans to catch a Broadway show afterward, and the pizza, absolutely delicious. After dinner, make your way to Times Square and take it all in. Start at Father Duffy Square near the Big Red Steps. This is probably the most iconic spot in the United States for snapping a photo, but don't linger too long. This area is also prime territory for tourist scams. We've covered this in depth in another video, but here's the quick version. If someone hands you a CD, a bracelet, or if Spider-Man insists on a photo, keep walking and don't make eye contact. Trust me, you'll thank me later. For some affordable souvenirs, head to Grand Slam, New York. They've got all the I Love New York shirts, keychains, and trinkets you could want, and the prices are surprisingly budget-friendly. If you're ready to relax a little, head over to Beast and Butterflies inside the M Social Hotel. Out of all the rooftop bars I've covered in the past 5 years, this one has gotten the most buzz from my viewers, and for good reason. The views of Times Square are incredible, the food and drinks are delicious, and here's the kicker, kids are actually welcome. Unique is an understatement. It's the perfect way to end your night in Times Square. Today we're diving into Lower Manhattan, or as the locals call it, downtown. Let's kick things off with breakfast. Pearl Diner. This place takes me right back to the diners I grew up with across the Hudson in New Jersey. It's a classic hole in the wall that's been serving locals for over 50 years. With $10 to $20, you'll get plenty of food, and the nostalgic vibes are unbeatable. We'll begin at one of the most somber and meaningful memorials in the city, the 9/11 Memorial, dedicated to the day New York and the world changed forever on September 11th, 2001. The fountains mark the footprints of where the Twin Towers once stood. It's a place for quiet reflection, so please save the smiling selfies for elsewhere. The Oculus is one of the cleanest and most futuristic transit hubs in New York. It feels like you've stepped inside a spaceship. It's also home to a high-end mall, but even if shopping isn't on your list, it's worth stopping by for a photo because the architecture is just that stunning. Fun fact, the Oculus has a skylight that opens every year on September 11th, allowing sunlight to stream through in a powerful tribute to the Twin Towers. A trip to Liberty Island and the Statue of Liberty is a must, but here's an important tip. Do not buy tickets from vendors hanging around the area. They're often overpriced or scams. Instead, book your tickets in advance, especially if you want to experience the best view climbing inside the crown of the Statue of Liberty. Crown access is limited and requires reservations months ahead, so plan early. This visit will take up the rest of your morning and likely stretch into the afternoon. While you're there, consider stopping for lunch at the cafe on Ellis Island, which offers a convenient break before exploring more. Fun fact, Ellis Island was the entry point for over 12 million immigrants between 1892 and 1954, making it a place of deep history and connection for many families. Once you're back in Manhattan, take a stroll down Stone Street. Its charming cobblestones were recreated to reflect how New York looked back in the 1600s. This historic street was home to the city's first breweries, and today you can still grab a beer or a bite at one of the many cozy restaurants lining the block. It almost feels like you've stepped into a scene straight out of Harry Potter. All right, it's time to regroup. We'll walk, Uber, or Subway to Chinatown, starting at Doyer Street. Welcome to the most Instagrammable street in Manhattan. This spot is also home to the infamous Bloody Angle, a sharp bend in the road with a dark past. It was once a notorious site for gang rivalries and assassinations by Chinese gangs. Today, though, it's a much friendlier place known for some of the best Chinese food in New York. Who's ready for a late lunch we didn't eat at Ellis Island? Deluxe Greenbow. This spot is a local favorite for the best soup dumplings in Manhattan with communal seating. It's everything you'd hope for in an authentic Chinatown experience, fast service, and incredibly delicious food. Don't miss a steamed pork and crab mixed tiny bun starting at $9.95. Heads up, it's cash or Venmo only, so come prepared. If you've got any room left for dessert, head across the street to the original Chinatown Ice Cream Factory, a neighborhood staple. They're known for unique and exotic flavors like lychee and black sesame, so come with an open mind and a sweet tooth ready to try something new. And if you're looking looking to explore more of Chinatown, we've got you covered. Check out our full compilation video packed with hours of food and activity recommendations. Time to walk off that food coma or subway taxi if you're too tired to Greenwich Village. Head north and make your way to Washington Square Park, a longtime cultural hotspot. It's the perfect place for people watching, and you're almost guaranteed to catch some live music or street performances. Here's a fun little Easter egg. If you look straight through the Washington Square Arch, you'll get a picture-perfect view of the Empire State Building. From there, head to 7th Avenue, walk south, and turn right onto Grove Street. That's where you'll find the exterior of the Friends apartment building. The surrounding area is absolutely stunning, filled with classic brownstones and some of the most expensive real estate in Manhattan. Walk up to the High Line if you're feeling extra ambitious, one of New York's most famous free parks. This elevated walkway was once an old freight train track, but has been transformed into a stunning urban green space. As you stroll, you'll pass impressive art murals, beautiful landscaping, and get unique views of the city with streets and cars below. You don't have to walk the entire 1.5 miles, but it's definitely worth snapping some photos along the way. Fun fact, the High Line was inspired by a similar elevated park in Paris called Promenade Planty. If you follow it north, you can end your walk at Hudson Yards, where you'll find the iconic vessel, a futuristic honeycomb-like structure perfect for a quick photo. Take a break, you've earned it, because for dinner we're heading to Koreatown, or K-Town as the locals call it. If you're looking to check out Koreatown, I would head to Food Gallery 32. It's my wife Adriana's and my favorite spot for quick, delicious Korean food. Kobe Q is our pick. Our go-to is the barbecue rice bowl with pork, but there's plenty of variety to choose from. Plus, if you're in the mood for something else, the food court has a ton of other vendors to explore, making it a perfect stop for a casual meal. After dinner, make a stop at Rudy's Bar and Grill in Hell's Kitchen. This is hands down my favorite dive bar in the city, and it's been around since 1933. The beer is cheap, their blonde ale is just $4, and every drink comes with a free hot dog. Yes, you heard that right, a free hot dog. It's a throwback to prices from the early 2000s, and the vibe is unbeatable. A perfect mix of local characters and curious tourists. Time for day 3 of your New York trip, and if you're looking for something quick but iconic for breakfast, Russ and Daughters is one of those classic New York institutions that truly lives up to the hype. For a more relaxed experience, head just a few blocks over to their cafe for a sit-down version of the same legendary food. Can't go wrong with their classic bagel and lox sandwich. No, it's not cheap, but yes, it's absolutely worth every penny. Then we're gonna take a subway, taxi, or Uber to Pier 11 Wall Street. Here's a tip most guides won't mention. Take the NYC ferry for just $4. Download the NYC ferry app to pay easily by phone. As you cross the East River, you'll get unbeatable views of the Brooklyn Bridge, and in about 5 minutes, you'll land right in the heart of Dumbo, much closer than taking the subway, which involves a longer walk. If you've got extra time and want to discover more ways to use the ferry, check out my video where I break it all down. I encourage you to stroll around Brooklyn Bridge Park for all the photo opportunities. It's truly one of the most beautiful areas of the city. While you're in the area, especially if you've got little ones, make sure to stop by Jane's Carousel. I'd argue there isn't a carousel in the world with a better backdrop. This beautifully restored wooden carousel, built in 1922, features 48 hand-carved horses and is truly a masterpiece. If you've seen that iconic photo of the Manhattan Bridge framed perfectly between buildings, it's taken right here at the corner of Washington and Water Street. I won't blame you for snapping the shot, but be prepared to jockey for position with other photographers. Or, just Photoshop everyone out later. For lunch, we'll keep things simple and send you to the touristy Timeout Market. While I'm usually not the biggest fan of this place, Bark Barbecue on the top floor is a standout exception. Their Dominican Texas barbecue fusion is absolutely delicious, though it's a bit on the pricey side. If you're up for some American barbecue with a twist, their famous brisket is worth braving the long lines. Bonus tip, step outside onto the Timeout Market rooftop for one of the best free views of Manhattan. After lunch, I highly recommend walking the Brooklyn Bridge back to Manhattan. The views are far better when you're facing the Manhattan skyline, making it perfect for photos. The walk takes about 30 minutes and is absolutely worth it. But if you're feeling tired or just not up for the walk, no worries. You can hop on the NYC ferry back to Pier 11 for just $4. It's a great alternative and still offers some beautiful views along the way. Once you cross the East River, it's just a 10-minute walk to South Street Seaport, a historic area filled with some of the oldest buildings in New York City. It's home to the largest concentration of restored early 19th century commercial buildings, making it a must-see for history buffs. For a hidden gem, check out Canada Cannon's Walk, a tucked away alley that feels like you've been transported straight back to the 19th century. It's a little slice of old New York you won't want to miss. If you've got a little extra time, head over to Pier 35 and check out the Pier 35 swings. It's the perfect spot to snap a photo or video with the Manhattan and Brooklyn bridges as your backdrop. Trust me, there's no view quite like it anywhere else in the world. Next, hop on a subway or grab an Uber to the Roosevelt Island tram station. Want to try something different? Check out Revel, the all-electric car service. Use this code for 70% off your first ride. It's a fun, eco-friendly way to get around. For just the cost of a subway swipe, hop on the Roosevelt Island tram and glide above the East River. It feels like a tourist attraction, but it's a regular part of city life. When you land, you'll find yourself on a quiet little island that's technically part of Manhattan, but feels like a world away. Start your exploration of Roosevelt Island with the Smallpox Memorial Hospital, a striking example of Gothic revival architecture that reveals a darker chapter of the island's history. You can walk the perimeter of the island or rent a city bike for a more leisurely ride. Other must-see stops along the way include the Franklin D. Roosevelt Four Freedoms State Park, and at the northern tip of the island, the Roosevelt Island Lighthouse. If you want to spend even more time exploring the island, we have a whole video dedicated to it where we spent an entire day there with a local. Check it out. Take a break and get ready for dinner. If you haven't noticed by now, I'm a big fan of hidden gems, and Sakagura is one of the best. Tucked away in an unassuming midtown building and down a flight of stairs, you'll discover an incredible Japanese restaurant. They specialize in authentic tapa-style dishes perfect for sharing, and they boast an impressive selection of 260 types of sake. It's a truly memorable New York experience as long as you take it easy on the sake. Here's an after-dinner drink and entertainment option. The Freaky Tiki is a must for my Broadway and karaoke lovers. This quirky Hawaiian-themed bar not only serves up great food, but also delivers a one-of-a-kind experience. The host sings, plays piano, and takes requests, plus you can hop in and sing yourself. If you're in the mood for show tunes or classic oldies, just slip the host a tip and you'll have the playlist at your command.
I want to be a part of it. Where? New York.
I'm gonna show you every must-see attraction in Central Park, New York's most famous escape. But the best part is this guide will be stress-free, and everything on this video can be seen in only a few hours, including a castle, the most scenic photo spots, and even a zoo. More on that later. Let's go see this castle. While on the way to the only castle in NYC, I got a little hungry, so I stopped by my favorite place to get something only New York is known for, and no, it's not pizza. Meet Billy, the friendliest hot dog vendor in the city, who sets up shop right across from Central Park. Billy is an absolute legend on this channel, and I have not been back here in quite some time. How you been? You're good, you're always here.
Soon I'm going on vacation. I'm going to Greece for 3 months.
I'm very jealous. I just want to get 2 hot dogs with onion and mustard.
How's your little baby?
He's not such a little baby anymore. It's been a while. See ya. Nothing like a nice warm wiener to wake you up at 11 in the morning. Hot dog, Central Park, doesn't get much better. There's something magical about these hot dogs. I can't put my finger on what it is, but they're magic. Here's a little Easter egg in case you ever get lost in Central Park and your phone doesn't have any service. Look at one of the 1,600 lampposts. There is a 4-digit code which could help you out a lot. The first 2 digits represent the closest cross street, so in this case, it's 93rd. Now you have these 2 numbers here. The first number represents how close you are to the exit, and since this is 1, you could literally see the exit to the street right there. Now this last digit, if it's odd, it means you're on the west side of Central Park. If it's even, it means you're on the east side. And then when we look at this number as a whole, 19, this goes from 0 to 40, 40 being the center. We're about halfway to the center of the park.
I can't believe I ran into you.
Where are you from?
Patterson.
My mom used to teach in Patterson. Oh, it was nice meeting you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks for all the great content.
Thank you. Appreciate it. The last thing you would expect in the middle of New York City is a castle, but lo and behold, Belvedere Castle. I feel like we're about to enter the Magic Kingdom. So this is built in the Gothic style with a single turret, 2 wooden balconies, 2 pavilions. Many brave men were killed here trying to save the princess. All right, this may come as no shock to you, but this isn't a real castle. There's no king, queen, or crown jewels inside, just more tourists. But hey, the architects Calvert Vaux and Jacob Ray Mold nailed it. A lot of stairs too. Oof, too many stairs today. We gotta go up there though, you know it, right? Perfect way to work off a hot dog is this. Whoa, we made it. Belvedere means viewpoint in Italian, and who needs a throne when you can rule over all of the tourists from the top of a fake castle? So we're on the second highest natural point in Central Park. In 1919, the US Weather Bureau converted the building into a weather station, and they left in 1960. That was one of the original purposes here. Nothing gives you those old school European castle vibes like some reggaeton music in the background. This is nice, wow. Croton Reservoir right here. Thank you so much. Oh, you're welcome. We're actually filming a video right now about Central Park. Yeah. Of course, you gotta exit through the gift shop, even a castle. Strawberry Fields is a 2.5-acre landscape section of the park dedicated to John Lennon, the legendary Beatle and New Yorker who was murdered across the street from here in front of the Dakota Building in 1980. It was named after the Beatles song, Strawberry Fields Forever. This is one of the most popular parts of Central Park, and if you're lucky, you can usually find somebody playing John Lennon and Beatles music right here.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try.
The focal point of this is the Imagine mosaic right in the center. Typically there's flowers there, and it's named after John Lennon's most famous song, Imagine. On John Lennon's birthday and the day that he died and other holidays, there's a lot of flowers and gifts left on the Imagine mosaic. Very heartfelt. People still care about the Beatles and John Lennon a lot. This is one of the park's most iconic spots, Bow Bridge, built in the Victorian era back in 1862. It spans 60 feet, and I'm willing to bet it gets at least 5 marriage proposals a day. This offers scenic views of the lake with the Manhattan skyline in the background, great for photos, and tons of movies have been filmed here, like Manhattan, The Way We Were, and Keeping the Faith. Fun fact, Bow Bridge gets its name from its arched shape, which looks like the arch of a bow and arrow. I think the real magic of Central Park is that you see the skyline all around you, but you are away from it. There's this peace in the chaos that is New York. This could be the most beautiful spot in all of Central Park. Bethesda Terrace and Fountain. Certain times a year, you even see turtles. There's one of them. So this is one of the very first structures to have been built in Central Park. Built during the Civil War, completed in 1863. And we've got grand architecture, a famous fountain, views over the lake. It's perfect for people watching. And you may have seen more photos of this than any other spot in the park. Now, when designing the terrace, Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux had a clear vision. Nature would take center stage with architecture playing a supporting role. They envisioned the terrace as the heart of the park. Vaux even said nature first, second, and third, architecture can come later. The Bethesda Fountain was designed with intricate carvings showing off the times of the day and 4 seasons. It is absolutely beautiful. The upper and lower terraces of the arcade are connected by these 2 grand staircases. This could be the crown jewel of Central Park. The Bethesda Arcade is like walking into a museum because on the ceiling are the world famous Minton tiles from England. And these tiles are on the floors of many cathedrals all over Europe. This is the only spot in the entire world where the tiles are on the ceiling. Finally, a ceiling that knows it's too cool for the floor. Yes?
I've been watching your videos for the last half year.
Very cool. You enjoying New York? Awesome. Well, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, in Germany we just put a YouTube video and we found them.
Oh, thank you so much.
You don't know us, but we know you because we too watched all your videos before we came here.
Welcome to New York.
Thank you.
All right.
See you.
This is craziness. I've never been recognized so much in one day. Just steps from Bethesda Terrace, the mall and literary walk are a must-see. Visitors can experience this landscape in largely the same way they would have in the 19th century. Strolling, sitting, people watching, listening to music. When the architects designed this walkway, they were inspired by European public spaces. The mall is home to one of the largest and last remaining batch of American elm trees in North America. Dutch elm disease decimated the population in the US. They stand today miraculously thanks to dedicated Central Park arborists who protect them. So appreciate all the trees here because it took a lot of work to preserve them. This is also one of the most photogenic spots in all of Central Park in the autumn. When the leaves change colors, there's nothing like it. The southern section of the mall is known as the Literary Walk because of the numerous statues of writers added there in the 19th century. Sheep Meadow. On a nice day, you will find swarms of New Yorkers here, picnicking, playing sports, relaxing, having lunch. It's tough to beat those skyline views and all this space, because green space in New York is quite difficult to find. The Sheep Meadow got its name from the flock of Southdon and Dorset sheep that roamed here from 1864 to 1934. Olmsted and Vaux thought the sheep added to the park's romantic English vibe. Plus, they had a practical job. They helped keep the grass trimmed and fertilize the lawn naturally. Although it's been almost 100 years since you could find sheep grazing here. The Dairy is Central Park's largest gift shop, and it's designed to resemble a Victorian cottage. It was actually finished in 1871. Originally, it was an eatery where children could get fresh milk, which wasn't readily available to many urban families. Does the Dairy sell dairy? Ooh, they have non-alcoholic phony Negroni. Even better. And every purchase you make here supports the Central Park Conservancy. So help support the park by buying something from this gift shop. Just a little note about riding pedicabs. There's a lot of great pedicab drivers in Central Park, but please negotiate a price first. Don't let it be one of those $5, $10 per minute rides, or you're gonna spend more than your plane ticket, okay? If you have some spare time, the oldest municipal zoo in the United States is right here in Central Park, admission 1995. It's pretty small, but it packs a punch. They've got snow leopards, red pandas, penguins. You can even see the sea lions from the outside if you stare carefully. Definitely a spot to go if you've got kids. Gapstow Bridge may look familiar to you if you are a fan of Home Alone 2, because this is the spot right underneath where Kevin meets the pigeon lady at the end. And if you look straight ahead, you can even see where Kevin stayed at the Plaza Hotel, one of New York's most expensive hotels, for the record, during the holidays. Mainly because of him, I would say. If you're coming to New York for the holidays, we have an entire video dedicated to Home Alone 2 and all the filming locations. A fun fact, the first version of this bridge was built in 1874, but it was wooden with iron railings that couldn't handle the weather. So in 1896, a new stone bridge was built, and that's the one you see today. This is, no shock, called the Pond. And it was designed intentionally because when you leave busy Fifth Ave, you start to walk downwards into a peaceful area that feels away from the city noise. So even though it feels like you're leaving the city, you can still see the tall buildings on the other side, letting you know like just how close you are to the hustle and bustle of Manhattan. This is one of the best entry and exit points to the park as well. New York has changed. In today's video, we'll update you about some new scams that both tourists and locals need to be aware of. Plus, we'll revisit some classic cons you need to watch out for. So you know about the fake merchandise handbags that you can buy all over Canal Street, but there's a new wrinkle to this that has been making headlines, and that's knockoff Apple products. I'm talking about AirPods Pro, AirPods Max. They're selling for hundreds of dollars off the retail price all over Canal Street. It sounds too good to be true. The New York Post even ran an undercover operation showing how they were fakes. The instructions were in different languages. Best case scenario, they're gonna work and be awful quality. Worst case, these AirPods won't even function. What's crazy is you won't just see this occurring on Canal Street. I've seen it all over Manhattan. I've seen sellers even in Brooklyn on Fifth Ave, near where I live, which is not a touristy area at all. And clearly, people are still falling for this, otherwise they wouldn't be out in such high numbers. Look, I'm a huge fan of cheap eats, but in New York, you definitely do not want to buy cheap electronics. Something else to keep in mind if you buy one of these Apple knockoffs, there is a no refund policy. Good luck finding the seller that you bought from. So remember that, always buy directly from the retailer or try to get a better price online with a reputable website. This next new scam is occurring in one of New York's most touristy locations, Central Park, so listen closely. Especially my women watching, as that's who the prime target of this has been. And how it works is a group of teens will approach you and ask for a donation for their sports team. But instead of cash, they'll ask for Zelle or Venmo payment, the money transferring apps on your cell phone. Then they convince you to hand your phone to them, saying they'll type in their email. all seems good until you check the transaction and realize these guys just milked you for thousands of dollars. Yes, they took a combined $4,000 from 4 victims already. This happens mostly at Sheep's Meadow, which is the most popular part of Central Park. Where to begin? The most obvious thing here is never to hand your phone to a stranger for any reason whatsoever. This is even worse than giving somebody your wallet for a donation. It's like giving them the keys to your bank vault. They can go absolutely wild, and there's no guarantee that you're gonna get your money back. A former Miss New York even got taken by this. Apparently she was groggy from having her wisdom teeth removed and was targeted at Madison Square Park. I'd be on guard for anyone who approaches you asking for a donation, and we'll tell you about a classic con that uses this very same tactic later on in the video. Also, there's a variation on this where instead of a donation for a team, it's selling candy. Be aware out there. This next new scam has many variations. Pay attention even if you don't live in New York, because it can happen anywhere in the US, but it involves unpaid parking tickets. The scammers will send a text that says the recipient has an unpaid parking ticket in the city or a toll fee to pay. I was even targeted for this myself. I got a text message about an unpaid toll. I had recently rented a car, so for a second, I thought it was real, but no. It's a phishing site that once you input your credit card information, will put that into the hands of hackers. I've also myself received texts about mail that hasn't been picked up by the USPS and they're charging you a fee to hold it. There's a lot of variations on it. Be very careful about any text message you get, period, asking about payment. These scams are getting sophisticated, and I always seem to get them right as I wake up in the morning. So one of these days, I may even fall for it. There's an interesting hustle right now being reported on Reddit that I've been curious about for a really long time, and it's about getting overcharged at bodegas or delis. What's a scam you run into often in the city? Today, a bodega owner tried to charge me $6 for a can of Diet Coke and then said, "Oh, sorry, my mistake," when I caught it. Dude tried to charge $15 for a bacon, egg, and cheese and got real flustered when I went, "Oh, no worries, I live here. I'll just go to the bodega down the block that has them for $6. Years ago, something like this actually happened to me. Granted, I had a few drinks in my system, I was out at night in the village, I ordered a bagel, and the guy at the bodega quoted me some wild price, and I said, "Wait, what was that again?" And then he gave me the real price. Look, most people that work at delis and bodegas are very honest, but every once in a while, the price listed is not the price you are actually gonna be quoted. So when in doubt at a bodega, ask them for each individual price if you're getting a bunch of items. Usually there's price tags on them anyway. It's sad that there are a few dishonest owners or staff out there who are making everybody else look bad. And we have talked time and time again about another variation on this, and that is getting ripped off by street food carts. Now, how it works is if the price is not listed, let's say for a hot dog vendor, and you order all the food, some dishonest vendors are gonna charge you whatever they think they can get away with. And I've heard stories of my viewers getting charged $15, $20 for a hot dog. So what you have to do is if the prices are not listed, and they should be listed on every street food cart, ask for them in advance. Heck, the other day, I was by Prospect Park and a hot dog vendor tried charging me $4 for a water. It happens still. Battery Park is the gateway to the Statue of Liberty, and there are plenty of scams to be on the lookout for here, starting from when you walk up the subway steps. You'll get asked if you're going to the Statue of Liberty. This has gotten so out of hand that there's even signs here reminding you illegal ticket vendors are selling deceptive tickets that cannot access the Statue of Liberty or Ellis Island. Illegal ticket vendors cannot upgrade Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island tickets. Statue City Cruises is the only authorized boat to the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island. To save yourself a massive headache, pre-book your Statue of Liberty tickets on the City Cruises website. That way, when you arrive here, you don't have to worry about anything or buy tickets that may not actually get you to the Statue of Liberty or charge you too much money. And to go one step further, book access to the crown of the statue if you can, because that is an unforgettable experience. And remember to steer clear of any vendors who try to sell you better tickets to get to the statue or Ellis Island. In fact, a few years ago, actor Alec Baldwin even fell for this, buying 4 tickets that sent him to New Jersey. And he's from New York, and he still fell for this. And one more reminder, The Staten Island Ferry is free. You do not need tickets to board it and get a great view of the Statue of Liberty. There was a story a few years ago about somebody who was selling tickets to the Staten Island Ferry for $200 and tourists fell for it. Never ever buy tickets to the Staten Island Ferry. This is something I never thought I'd be discussing, but here we are. The city has been warning people about scams involving artificial intelligence. And these are typically some kind of voice cloning, pretending to be a loved one. In one instance, a mom got a call from her daughter who's 14 and said she got arrested and would have to pay cash to bail her out. It was her daughter's voice. It was accurate. Luckily, her daughter did eventually call her for real. They're not super common yet, but I think over time they could be. And these are the signs the city mentioned you need to be on the lookout for this kind of AI cloning scam. You're contacted out of the blue, you're pressured to act immediately with no time to think, the caller is urgently requesting money, usually through a wire transfer, gift card, payment app, or crypto. These methods of payment make it nearly impossible to get a refund once you've been scammed. The caller is requesting personal or private information from you. You're told to keep the caller's request a secret. Well, we talked about getting weird text messages. Now you gotta be on the lookout for weird phone calls as well. And if you're in doubt, you could always ask the AI clone a personal question that they probably won't know the answer to if you put them on the spot. We have a whole video dedicated to surviving your arrival to JFK Airport, but there's two airport scams you really need to be on the lookout for. The first is anyone approaching you outside the taxi line offering you a lift to the city. The problem here is even if they offer you a better rate, once your luggage is in their trunk, you are at their mercy. They're not registered by anyone or insured. Either wait in the taxi line or use a rideshare service like Uber, Lyft, or Revel, and use this code here to get 70% off your first Revel ride if you're interested, and those are all electronic cars. The other scam is even sneakier. I've seen it with my own eyes. Someone holding an Uber sign, they'll ask if you were calling an Uber and try to negotiate a high rate with you without using the app. Remember, Ubers can only be called from the app on your phone. These are not real Uber drivers. We'll call this the Times Square trifecta, although you could run into any of these in different locations around the city. The most classic scams in New York, the fake monks, they'll approach you and offer you either a bracelet or some cheap trinket, then show you a guest book and photos of the Buddhist temple they're raising money for. This temple does not exist. They are not real monks. Don't even engage. The CD guys. I really feel like the CD guys have duped so many tourists because every time I mention them, the comments are full of stories. Here's how it works. These would-be rappers usually travel in packs and try to hand you a CD. If you accept it, they'll aggressively ask you for a tip. Or if they engage you in conversation, they'll ask for your name and autograph the CD. Either way, expect to be really pressured to hand over some cash. I've heard many stories about how these CDs are blank. The costume characters. This is all over Times Square. Mickey Mouse, Spider-Man, the Hulk. Pose for a photo with them and expect each and every one of them to pester you for a big tip. Be extra careful if your kids run up to them and want a photo because after you take that picture, they will get aggressive for money. If you must take a photo with them, set a price first. The dropped food, glass, medicine scam. This is the oldest con in the book, and yes, it still occurs even in 2024. How it works is the crook will walk up to you, bump into you, and then whatever falls on the ground, accuse you of breaking it. They'll then demand payment on the spot or have you walk to an ATM with them to get cash. I know someone personally who had this happen to them with a bottle of malt liquor, and they didn't know any better and paid the guy. Heck, there was even one con artist in the village who did this so frequently, they posted his photo on the streets. It was honestly like a rite of passage living near Bleecker Street. He tried it on my wife with French fries, but she had watched my videos and knew that he was full of it. Then, months later, he even tried it on me. My wife was with me, we just laughed, and he probably scooped up those French fries and kept walking, looking for somebody else to trick. Although I do wonder how much he would have charged me for those fries. If anybody says you caused them to drop something, keep on walking, they won't follow you. The I need money hustle. I have waxed poetic about people approaching you near any of the bus or train terminals, asking you for money to get to Buffalo just this once. And of course, the next day, they'll be there again, asking for money to some other destination. And I've even seen a variation of this by the air train at JFK Airport on the elevator when you're stuck with them and you can't run away to say no. Of course, you can say no. A new one I've been hearing about is somebody standing outside of a bodega and they'll ask you for money for baby formula for their sick child. Now, in New York, if anyone asks you for money for any reason on the street, they are not going to be using it for said purpose. Trust me. 3-card Monte and shell games. This is the kind of thing you see in the movies, but I swear it has made a comeback in New York after COVID. I didn't even believe it until I saw a game occurring near Bryant Park last year during the Christmas season. A small crowd will form, they're all in on it, they'll lull you into thinking you can win some money, and you may win a little until you put a big bet down and lose it all. Even if you can read their sleight of hand and pick the right card, one of the guys in on it will jump in, double their bet, pick the other card, giving their money right back to the house. It is literally impossible to win, so don't even try. It's rigged.
Traveling to New York can be a once-in-a-lifetime experience, but visiting here comes with its own unique challenges, which is why I'll be sharing 50 must-know New York travel hacks. These will save you time, money, and headaches. Trust me, here we go. Take the NY ferries. Now, the Staten Island ferry is well known for its free Statue of Liberty views, but the $4 NY ferries are even better in my opinion. There's so many cool routes to take. Anything that runs along the East River is incredible. You'll pass some of the city's top bridges, like the Brooklyn, and you can even sit up top and get some of the same views that much more expensive tour boats have. Of all the things in this video, this might be my favorite NYC travel hack. I just try to avoid peak commuting times when New Yorkers are going to and from work, as that's its primary purpose. Take a free walking tour with a Big Apple greeter. You've heard of free walking tours where you tip at the end. Those are great, but there's a program called the Big Apple Greeters where local volunteers take you around the city showing you their favorite areas. You just fill out a form and they see if they can find someone to place you with, as long as it's 1 month's notice. We're talking hidden gems. It's like seeing New York with a long-lost friend, and they won't even accept money if you try, but maybe a small gift from your home city or country would be nice. Visit bigapplegreeter.org for more info to sign up. Give this plenty of notice if you can. One of my favorite ways to impress friends or family visiting is to take them to any of the hidden streets of New York. Here are some of my favorites. Washington Mews, which is steps from Washington Square Park. It feels like you stepped into Europe. Sylvan Terrace uptown is absolutely gorgeous and full of history. Freeman Alley is like walking through a movie set, and we've got Stone Street, which basically feels like Harry Potter world. I'll throw in 6½ Avenue, which I can't even believe exists and runs directly between 2 different avenues. There's even more of these, but I'll let you try to find out where they are. This is an amazing idea that I'd save to impress someone special. People ask me sometimes, what would be the one place to go celebrate something huge? And I tell them Saga in Lower Manhattan. It's gotten 2 Michelin stars, and we filmed at Overstory, which is the cocktail bar 1 floor above it, so I've seen it. You're eating a world-class meal, and then you get free access to the outdoor rooftop, which has some of the best views of the city I've ever seen. It's like going to One World Observatory, but being outside of it. So that's a 2-for-1 trick during warmer months I'd recommend that may leave you speechless. This is the best JFK Airport arrival hack I have. If you want to take public transit into the city, go take the Long Island Railroad, also known as the LIRR, from Jamaica Station, which is connected to the air train. You can head to either Grand Central or Penn Station for the princely sum of $5 with a city ticket. The seats are more comfortable, there's luggage racks, and it's direct in only 20 minutes. I've never taught anyone this tip who wasn't shocked how simple it was. Of course, this works best if you don't have a ton of luggage and are staying in Midtown. If you need more details, see my video on JFK Airport tips, which we shot earlier this year. This one is simple, but Tap to Pay now works on any device that has a chip. So if you have a card saved, or you can even tap your credit card, and you don't need a Metro card. In fact, they're gonna get phased out eventually. Even at the AirTrain at JFK, they now have readers installed. So before you get to New York, make sure that Tap to Pay is enabled on your phone. It seems like most countries are way ahead of the US on this anyway, but we finally have it on our subways, which just makes life easier. No more having to worry about refilling your Metro card. And if you were thinking of buying a 7-day unlimited, you'll automatically ride free after your 12th paid trip as long as you use the same device. So this is just such a game changer in taking the subways and buses in New York. And if you insist on buying a Metro card, save it as a souvenir. BYOB or bring your own bottle restaurants are like unicorns in New York because they're so tough to find these days. Locals like to guard them tightly, but if you enjoy drinking while you have dinner, you can save a fortune finding them. Peking Duck House in Chinatown is probably the most famous one, but there's plenty of others out there. Now, some charge a corkage fee, some don't. Some places even let you bring your own beer or liquor. This may be a topic I will dive into at some point in the channel, because if you order enough $18 cocktails when you go out, your bill will get pricey in a hurry. Some underrated photo spots of New York. You know, some of the best photo opportunities of this city aren't even in the state of New York. Just crossing the Hudson to go to Hoboken provides you bird's eye views of the Manhattan skyline. From the east side, I love the views at Gantry State Plaza in Long Island City, and Roosevelt Island also provides some unique perspectives as well. More about Roosevelt Island later on in this video. Let's talk about New York's community gardens and hidden parks. There's some treasures hidden in plain sight in the Big Apple, and most neighborhoods have them. They're called community gardens. Many date back to the days when the city was really struggling and are still an oasis among the concrete jungle. There's also some great hidden parks in Midtown I want to highlight, such as Paley Park and Green Acre Park. These two are a great place to take a break during a busy day of sightseeing. Don't pass them up if you have the chance. Explore lesser-known museums. I realize that if time is tight, you may not have the ability to hit these spots, but if you're a fan of the iconic New York subway, then the Transit Museum is a cheap way to step back in time. Head right for the basement and check out subway cars from the last 100 years and see the evolution of transportation as you take some amazing photos. Another museum I think needs more love is at Francis Tavern. Go here to explore the city's Revolutionary War roots. And both are inexpensive at just $10 for admission and way less crowded than the bigger spots that most go to. Free museum days. I'm gonna link to this updated Time Out New York article in the description, but there are many museums that have free days or pay what you wish hours, which could save you a lot of money. The only caveat here is they usually get quite crowded during those periods, so keep that in mind. Some of the more popular ones are the Morgan Fridays 5 to 7 p.m., which requires reservations a week in advance, as well as the Whitney every Friday from 5 to 10. The New York Historical Society is Pay What You Wish on Fridays from 6 to 8. The New Museum of Contemporary Art is Pay What You Wish on Thursday, 7 to 9 p.m. For the rest of the list, see the link down below. Explore Central Park's lesser-known areas. Everybody knows that Central Park is a must-visit. Now, you can just scratch the surface. You can find the really cool parts away from the crowds at the bottom. If you have the time, my top pick is the Conservatory Garden with an entrance near 105th and 5th Ave. It's absolutely one of the top free things you can do in New York. And if you want even more ideas for Central Park, check out the entire guide we shot to it. We cover the park from top to bottom. Speakeasy bars. Now, if you're over 21 and looking for some distinctly New York adventures, I don't think any other city on the planet has as many hidden speakeasy bars as the Big Apple. These take you back to the days of Prohibition, and there's usually some kind of hidden entrance situation. But if you're a fan of cocktails, I've seen that most of them actually pay really close attention to the quality of their drinks. We visited one recently called Little Shop, which was hidden in the back of a bodega, and that may have been the most clever one I've seen yet. Their drinks rocked. It's a really great date idea as well. What about Broadway tickets for cheap? You've probably heard of the TKTS booth, but did you know about lotteries and SRO, also known as standing room only tickets? Check any show that you're interested in seeing, go on their website, especially if it's red hot or sold out, and they almost all have some kind of lottery system or standing room only deals day of the show. Some of these are digital lotteries, other times you actually have to go line up, and I've met people who would spend one morning trying to get rush tickets to a few shows, and they'd come up with some crazy steals. You could also try with the Today Tix app. In fact, I recommend you download it right now. They also offer some really nice discounts. Even though we've mentioned this a lot on the channel, taking the tramway to Roosevelt Island from Midtown is still not known to the majority of tourists to New York. Seriously, for the cost of a subway tap, $2.90, you get to soar above the city and then land on Roosevelt Island. We did an entire video dedicated on what to do there with a lifelong resident, but there's some hidden treasures on that place. Most notably, all the viewpoints of Manhattan and the peace and quiet it offers so close to the hustle and bustle. I don't even visit there enough, which is sad, but riding a city bike around that place is pretty tough to beat for a nice morning or leisurely afternoon activity. Could this be New York's most underrated attraction? It's amazing how many world cities have a famous cemetery that has a storied history, that has many celebrities resting there, and it's a can't-miss destination. Well, Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn was one of New York's most popular attractions and has generally fallen out of view even by locals. The views of the skyline are fantastic and the architecture is absolutely stunning. If this were in Manhattan, I'm convinced it would be way more popular. Take a tour or check out all the programming that goes on there year-round, such as movies and even concerts. A little observation deck hack for you. If you hate touristy observation decks, I get it. Some rooftop bars do offer amazing views and you just have to buy a drink. Now, we did mention Overstory before if you want that classy date experience, but the one that I actually get the most DMs about from happy viewers is at Beast and Butterflies in Times Square. That's a unique view that even Top of the Rock couldn't give you because you stare right at the bright lights. Go at night for maximum effect, and this one is great because children are allowed up there as well. Free kayaking. This is amazingly popular with locals and not as well known by tourists, but New York has some great free kayaking programs. The most famous one is at Pier 26 on the Hudson River. My personal pick, though, is the one at Brooklyn Bridge Park, as the views are unreal. It's offered on Wednesday and Thursday evenings and Saturday and Sunday afternoons during the season. Both do recommend reservations, although you could get lucky if you just show up. This is something a whole family could even do together and is way different than a typical New York afternoon activity. You get about 15 or 20 minutes. You want to save some money on New York hotels and don't stay in Midtown Manhattan. The best deals are in the outer boroughs, which in this case we're referring to Brooklyn and Queens. The one area I've actually had a bunch of friends who are visiting the city quite impressed with the quality, price, and location was downtown Brooklyn, because you're only a few stops away from Manhattan, and for whatever reason, the prices are really fair. Long Island City, Queens is another spot that I've had friends stay at who are happy with, and if we're talking time of year, usually right after New Year's, the second week or so of January is actually the cheapest time of year to come here for hotel prices, although be prepared for some cold. For the least crowds at observation decks, be the first one for admission. You can pre-book tickets for all of the observation decks, pick the earliest slot possible, and this is actually quite easy to do. Ditto for the Statue of Liberty. I've heard the lines lately are super, super long, so going early and knocking it out will ensure the boat isn't full as well. And as I always say, visiting the Statue of Liberty in Ellis Island can easily eat up half a day, so going early on is never a bad idea. And make sure to buy your tickets in advance. not with any random resellers outside. Here's how you save money on sporting event tickets. Now, New York has had some really good teams lately. The Rangers, the Knicks, the Yankees are playing well. Tickets to some regular season games can be pricey, and while it's easiest to save money on baseball tickets because they have the longest season, my top advice to save money on a hot ticket is wait till the day of the game. And if you're feeling patient enough, go to the stadium or arena, then right before the game starts, check the StubHub app. People will be way more desperate to dump their tickets, and you can get some really great deals this way. Sometimes you don't even need to do this. Just check a few days before, and you may even get a better price than at the box office. Again, this works best for baseball. Sadly, finding a bathroom when you need it in New York is like trying to find Waldo in a black and white photo. Impossibly tricky. I always advise using the facilities before you leave your hotel, at any attraction or after a meal, but sometimes nature calls at the worst moments. I get it. So these are the spots I would look for a public bathroom. Any hotel lobby is by far the easiest. Bryant Park has the cleanest public bathroom in the city. The M&M store is one that most people don't realize on the top floor has some nice bathrooms. And lastly, I would say any bar or some restaurants would work as well. Are you planning on coming to New York last minute and want to save some money? Well, the app Hotel Tonight is a very good one for those last-minute travelers. I've seen this generally work best if you're only staying for one night and you just scroll the app, you see all the hotels with major price cuts because the rooms probably aren't going to be used. I actually did use this once when our flight got canceled in Rome, but if you live within a couple of hours or in the tri-state area and are just thinking of a last-minute trip into New York, this is a handy application to definitely save you some money, so put it on your phone. All right, you need to try the most famous street food in New York, and that is halal, which is typically lamb, chicken, or beef over rice with some kind of white sauce or any sauce. I've heard too many horror stories of my viewers just randomly trying a hot dog and not having a very tasty experience. You are far better off randomly buying halal from a vendor than a hot dog. Although if you want my all-time favorites in Manhattan, that'll be Adele's, but their lines are super long. But I also recommend Royal Halal, which is a few blocks away and almost never has much of a line. Their chicken tikka plate is my favorite, but either way, don't leave New York unless you've tried at least one halal cart. If you don't have the time to hit the outlets in New York State, Century 21 in Lower Manhattan is an amazing option. Now, this was closed for 3 years after the pandemic, but it reopened in 2023. And across its 4 floors, you'll find everything from men's clothing, women's clothing, children's apparel, footwear, handbags, housewares, and some authenticated vintage items. And they even made it over a little bit. They have a self-checkout now. They have New York City-focused gifts. This is an alternative if you don't want to go to any of the outlets like Jersey Gardens or Woodbury Commons. Those will provide ultimately the best deals, but they're also going to eat up half of your day, so really factor in how important that big shopping trip is for you. If you want to get cash back at tons of NYC restaurants, this is an app I even use myself. It's called Seated. It's really simple. You just pick a participating restaurant on the list, and there's tons of them in Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens, and whatever the percentage is, you get that back on your bill. I've seen it as high as 21% before, and you get the money instantly. The coolest part is you can buy gift cards with it, like Airbnb, Uber, there's a lot of others, and if you want a $10 bonus added to your first meal, use my code JOHN28. New York has so much public art where you don't even have to pay for a museum. And I'm not talking about street art, which is its own thing. You can find all of it, including temporary and permanent exhibitions on this site, which breaks them down by type. So if you're a Civil War fan and want to see all 31 monuments, just click there and you'll find out about Abraham Lincoln's at Grand Army Plaza in Brooklyn, or the 11 Latino monuments. Have some fun with it. See if you can add any of these to routes you're going to be taking around the city anyway. Sitting in the conductor's car on the subway. I love bringing this one up for safety purposes because I even use this myself. If you want to sit in the same subway car where the conductor's going to be, all you have to do is look for the black and white zebra board, or as it's called, the indication board, usually against a wall near the center of the platform or hanging down. And that's where the conductor's car will stop and he'll point outside. You can also ask him a question if you're lost, so it really serves a dual purpose. All right, here's how you save money at a deli. If you go to any of the famous Jewish delis like Katz's, Sarge's, which is my pick, Second Ave Deli, the pastrami sandwiches are well over $20 each. But they're huge and an easy share for 2 people unless you're absolutely starving. I hear too many of my viewers get shocked about how big they are and realize they probably should have shared one and they don't want to lug it around all day to take back to their hotel. I could personally handle one myself, but it also means I might not be eating anything for the rest of the day. So factor that in if you're going to one of these legendary spots, and don't be afraid to share the sandwiches. All right, here's a must visit, the New York Public Library and the Polanski exhibition. And while I think visiting the library is pretty common knowledge among many tourists, not all realize that the Polanski exhibition is now permanent, and this is one of the best exhibits in the entire city, absolutely for free. They have the original Winnie the Pooh Bear in there and a lot of other famous artifacts like a signed copy of the Declaration of Independence. You could easily spend a half hour inside. This may be the best free rooftop view in New York, and yeah, we really harp on rooftops on this channel because there's no better way to get a feel for just how big New York is. And going right across the street from the public library to the Stavros Niarchos Library and visiting their rooftop is a requirement. It is such a hidden gem and was actually my favorite item on my 50 best free things to do in New York video. So if you need more ideas of free things to do, go watch that as well. What's the best way to get data on your phone in New York? Well, if you're visiting the city from overseas, I recommend getting an eSIM. These are amazing because you can download them in advance with a QR code and have them ready to go before you even touch down at the airport. You can also use WhatsApp with them. They're a great alternative to having to go to a local carrier and getting a SIM card or paying a lot in roaming charges. My personal pick is Olafly. See my link in the description if you want to get 5% off yours. Here's a great cheap breakfast hack. If you go to just about any deli or bodega as they're known locally, you're almost guaranteed to find a cheap breakfast. A bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich on a roll is the iconic breakfast sandwich of New York and definitely won't break the bank. They're usually $3, $4, $5. If you want to eat more and have a sit-down meal, a lot of the classic diners still offer really good deals. My 2 favorites are Pearl Diner in Lower Manhattan and the TikTok Diner in Midtown. I know some tourists, when they go somewhere, just want to hit the main attractions, and there's others who want to live like locals, and the local New Yorkers need to get out of their small apartments to go to events and activities. The Skint is my favorite site. They have a great email newsletter as well. For anyone who's just moved here, they don't miss anything. All the festivals and street fairs and openings you can handle. Like, I saw the only Greek Jewish festival in the world that happened on May 18th. Time Out New York is a bit more limited, but their website does highlight some cool events and shows as well. I would look at both of those during your trip if you want some local activities. Cash is king. Now, this isn't as true as it was before COVID, but I still run into plenty of eateries that are cash only. A lot of the hole-in-the-wall spots, in fact, some of the best ones in Chinatown, are cash only. It's not that big of a deal to find ATMs, but I always recommend you have at least 40 or 50 bucks in your wallet, just in case you stumble onto something really cool and want to pay for it right away. New York is a walking city. Do not bring new shoes here. Break them in before your trip. If you're not used to walking a lot, pace yourself. Practice before you come here. The last thing you want is heel or ankle pain after 3 or 4 days of walking 5 to 7 miles. Remember, the city is best seen on foot. If you're coming from somewhere where you drive everywhere, prepare yourself. And speaking of walking, depending on what country you're from, this may surprise you or maybe not, but every New Yorker will cross the street without a walk signal if there's no incoming traffic. Or sometimes I even see them jogging to avoid said oncoming traffic. Jaywalking tickets are almost unheard of here, although don't blame me if you're the 1 in a million that actually gets one. But when you get to Midtown, you'll see people are not waiting to cross if they get the opportunity, and you can feel free to join them. This may be a hack to save you some time sifting through my channel, because as far as food is concerned, my viewers' all-time favorites I keep hearing about are 2 places: Bleecker Street Pizza and the Nonna Maria slice, and a hot dog from Billy's. I'm really not surprised by either, since a Nonna Maria is the perfect hybrid slice between a Neapolitan and a New York one, with fresh ingredients and that Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. And then finding a hot dog vendor who is actually gonna have a nice chat with you, ask where you're from, and provide a quality product isn't so easy these days, and that's where Billy, right next to Central Park, comes along and charms all those who stop by. Bring your own bag. Plastic bag bans are a big deal here, so you'll have to keep paying at supermarkets for their bags. I'd personally make a point to buy a really cool tote bag while you're here, or bring one from home if you're gonna do any kind of grocery shopping. Otherwise, you're gonna have to keep paying for new ones. I just want to remind everyone that it's okay to be a tourist. This isn't a travel hack per se, but a mindset thing. I know everyone wants to be a local when you visit New York, but if there's an attraction or 2 or 3 you really want to do, go do them. I've visited almost every attraction in the city, and some of them are one of a kind. Attraction passes are useful if that's your top priority. Don't let anyone tell you to skip the touristy stuff and only live like the locals, even me. There's a reason New York is one of the most visited cities in the world. There's enough to keep you busy here for days if you just want to see the attractions as a tourist. I've actually gotten this tip from a few of my viewers. After COVID, many iconic and popular restaurants allow you to do to-go orders. Kat's Deli is the one I keep hearing about, but there's many others. So even if the spot isn't famous and you're in a rush, place a pickup order on the way back to your hotel. You can do this with DoorDash, Uber Eats. Because remember, if you place an order for delivery, expect at least a 30 to 45 minute wait for most restaurants. So if you do a pickup order, you're gonna save yourself time, and you may save a really long line if it's a spot that's very famous. Here's a great way to save money on takeaway. It's called Too Good To Go. It's super popular with locals, but many tourists have not heard about this app, and how it works is you check it for restaurants or eateries nearby who have extra food, and the app is all about saving food waste, so it can be for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and they give you what's called a surprise bag. It costs like $4 or $5, and you pick it up at the restaurant. You don't know what's in there, but I've heard stories of full meals. Sometimes it's a sandwich, a lot of pizza spots will do it, and you're saving yourself easily $10 or $15. Do this for a few people. If you are on a shoestring budget, this could be a very cheap way to eat in the city. Do not sleep on Washington Square Park. I used to live right by there. If you need to kill an hour just to relax, the spot is perfect. And they always have live music going on somewhere, and even if they don't, it's the heart of the village, and people watching will be tremendous. You will definitely be entertained, that I can promise you, but I will warn you about the constant smell of marijuana there. City Mapper, another game-changing app. Definitely download it before you come to New York. I prefer it to Google Maps because it just feels a bit more intuitive to me. My favorite feature is that you can even see which subway car to take, so you're closest to the exact exit that will put you on the street that you need. Perfect for my fellow Type A personalities watching. I know that's many of you, so give it a look. New York has so many different types of pizzas. I want to make sure you try something old school, like a plain slice at Luigi's in Park Slope, or even a Joe's worst case in the Village. Then try something new school, like Linda Street in Williamsburg, I don't know, the burrata slice, or Amano's on Canal Street in Manhattan, or my boy Dave's Slices at Philomena's in Queens, where they ferment the dough for a couple of days. New York is having a moment right now with its pizza, so you can honestly find the best of all worlds right now. If you're a pizza fan, go wild exploring. All right, tips for traveling with small kids, which I don't touch on enough on this channel. If you're traveling with small children, not all subways are accessible. Not all of them have elevators, and even if they do, they won't always be functioning. So make sure you bring a super compact, foldable stroller because you may need to take it down the stairs, and if you're by yourself, you may need to have your child either holding your hand or in your arms when you do so. Now here's a little bonus tip. The Met is actually free for children 12 and under if they can handle an art museum, and they have a new active play and a learning center called the 81st Street Studio, which is under the Met, completely free. There's also tons of playgrounds all over Manhattan and Brooklyn if they need a break, and I'm sure they will. Dress up for summer. If you're somebody that is sensitive to the cold, listen up because we're not talking about winter. Even in the summer, it can be cold in New York because due to American culture, we have AC everywhere. Broadway theaters can be cold in the audience. Even the subway sometimes inside can get a little bit chilly. So if you're sensitive to air conditioning, bring something light to cover up because even my mom complains about the air conditioning in restaurants every time she visits New York. Be prepared for this. This isn't so much a hack, but a friendly reminder that there's a lot of negative publicity about New York lately with crime, because it gets clicks. This is still one of the safest big cities in the US. The best advice I have for you is if you see someone looking like they're acting unstable, remove yourself from the situation. Cross the street, move away on the subway, switch subway cars at the next stop. Always pay attention to your surroundings. You'll have a great trip, but you have to keep your wits about you here. The biggest thing to look out for is somebody acting unstable, either due to drugs or mental illness, and removing yourself from those situations. I gotta give a big shout out to Atlas Obscura. I love this website. If you wanna know where I find a lot of the hidden gems for my videos, their site and book is where I turn to. So if you get bored with the ordinary, look at their page. They've only got 755 quirky things to do in New York that you really won't find in many guidebooks. Heck, use them in any city you visit to have a little more fun. I've heard countless stories of how this strategy has unearthed hidden treasures, but pick one morning or one afternoon and just explore a neighborhood. The great thing about New York is every neighborhood could be its own city. Too many people cram their itineraries and leave nothing to chance. Let the city inspire you a little bit. Just roam around the city staring at buildings or walk into a cafe or a random shop you've never heard of. Thank me later. New York's most iconic food spots are disappearing, and today we're on a mission to highlight them. These legendary family businesses have fed locals for generations. We're meeting up with 5 NYC food legends so we can find out what makes them truly irreplaceable. Only one problem, I don't have connections to these food icons, but I know someone who does. I'm joined with New York's unofficial talent scout, New York Nico, and we're starting at the Hot Dog King.
Right outside the Met Museum. You'll meet the Hot Dog King in a few minutes. He's been selling hot dogs for, I think, about 40 years now. He's got a very interesting story. I won't give too much away.
I'm Dan Rossi, the New York Hot Dog King.
How did you get into the hot dog business? Take us back to the beginning.
Oh boy. I was a sheet metal worker. One of the men in the shop had a heart attack, and he asked me to make him a hot dog cart because he was going to retire. And when I got done with it, he felt better he wasn't going to retire. So we went ahead and tried to sell it. I sold it within one day. I doubled the money it cost me. So I built one, I built another. 10 years later, had 499 carts on the street. I was the largest vending company in the history of New York City. Had no problem with a guy named Donald Trump who opposed veteran vendors, and I'm a disabled veteran. I did a couple of tours in Vietnam. Me and him went head to head. He had Rudy Giuliani in his pocket. Next thing I know, I'm out of business.
I've heard that you've run into some trouble where you can't leave your spot.
Yeah. What's happening now, originally it was just having problems with the Met, but then it turned out where they started to reinforce the black market of the industry. They would hire these veterans that were down and out, tell them stories that they can take any spot they want. And one morning we came and they were plopped right here. They just picked them up off the street and they were just trying to muscle the spot. That was happening about 12 years ago. First 3 years what I did was I would set up a chair in the push cart and I would doze off. And then they passed the rule that you can't be in the push cart, so I ended up moving into the van. This is it. I just lay out some blankets and I go to sleep. It's kind of lousy.
It's crazy.
You know, I'd much rather be home in a bed.
What keeps you going, being willing to sleep in your car almost every night for years just to keep this one space?
It's a question of survival. When they came and they attacked me and took my company, they forced me into bankruptcy and homelessness. So I went from having a great life to having nothing.
On a more positive note, what are your favorite things about being a vendor here?
Oh, I love people. You can sit here, you can laugh all day long with some of these things. I mean, you get people that are arguing over whether it's ketchup or mustard.
Ketchup or mustard, what do you think?
Never put ketchup on it. But I do it, but in the beginning it was hard for me to do it.
Yeah. Dan, could you tell us the difference between how you do it and like a typical dirty water dog in the city?
You don't want to have dirty water dogs. I'll tell you why. The water sucks out the flavor. So in the beginning, you're getting a really cardboard hot dog, really. But at the end of the day, that water is actually dark brown green. The hot dogs, when you take them out, they're green.
Yeah.
And a lot of the vendors, what they'll do is they'll wrap them up and they'll sell them to somebody the next day. You want to stay far away from it. If you came here 6 months from now or a year from now, you're going to get the same thing. So you're going to get a better one because we're working on our own brand now. So you're going to get a better, yeah.
I haven't tried the New York, so I'll try that.
I'll do a New York also.
New York is nice. It's just mustard, sauerkraut, just a little bit onion. And that's New York. That's the best way to have a hot dog.
How much longer do you think you're gonna work here?
90 years old. Then I go to Alaska. I'm going to Pan for gold.
How old are you now?
75 in 2 days.
Happy early birthday. Yeah, happy early
Thank
birthday.
you.
We're gonna go eat these on the steps of the Met, just like a tourist would. New York style, sauerkraut, onion, mustard. Let's rock. It's got a really nice snap, very crunchy. What do you think sets this apart from like other hot dogs you've had?
The fact that it's grilled and the guy who's selling it to you. He has amazing personality, it just makes it taste better.
It's really the truth. When you like the person that's selling you the food, I think it does taste better. You're helping to support a disabled veteran. And he is in like the one spot that as a tourist, if you're watching, you're very likely to go to, the Met. He's right outside of the door. The man's got a story and he's extremely friendly. I mean, throughout everything he's been through here, been arrested before. And this is the type of person we're showcasing. We still got 4 more to go. A lot of interesting stories and a lot of reasons to keep coming to these businesses because they're not gonna be here forever.
He says he wants to work until he's 90. That's only another 15 years of the hot dog king. Gotta appreciate these places while they're still here. Good glizzy?
Very good glizzy. Nico, we've got Rosario's, one of my favorite little hidden gems in Astoria because it looks like an Italian deli from the outside, but on the inside, some of the best pizza in the city.
One of the best in the business.
Looks like a deli, smells like a deli.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you.
Business has been around since 1986. I was down the block, I had a little shop, walked away from it. This opened up at the beginning of 2001. Nice size store, people could come in, have pizza. We have also some groceries, all Italian stuff.
What's your favorite thing about running this store?
I like food. I like talking to people. People say, oh, are you going to retire? I don't know, I'm not going to retire because I like to come here.
Now, what makes your pizza different than other spots?
My pizza is made with fresh mozzarella, which we make ourselves. The sauce we definitely cook. If you actually have a batch, we just made it.
Really good.
The American style is a lot of cheese. I personally want to be able to taste the sauce, the dough, and the cheese.
Which cheese is this?
There's a blend of pecorino here, some grana.
How many minutes does it cook for?
About 7 minutes. This is a traditional pie.
Oh, thank you so much. These look fantastic. I mean, Nico, we just saw the whole process, how they make their own mozzarella here.
How you pronounce mozzarella?
Oh yeah, I tried to get Italian there. The sauce made in-house. I mean, Rosario is just a legend. I think his pizza is so distinctive looking that if you were at an event, you would know this was a Rosario slice.
This one I feel like is super distinct. Also, there's not many pizza places that have the owner's face on the box.
Yeah, exactly. His face is also on t-shirts. A little Easter egg, if you were watching my Bronx Pizza video, Greg, my co-host, was wearing a Rosario shirt in that one. It would make for an amazing gift. This is definitely one of the better slices in New York. It's just the perfect balance of cheese to sauce.
So good.
I think in general, Queens does not get a good enough reputation for their pizza. They have so many amazing spots. I think
They really do.
Brooklyn and the city get way more attention.
It's also affordable. Less than $20 for an 18-inch pie.
Think about how many different shops this is in one. It's an Italian grocery store. It's a deli where you can get sandwiches and a pizza shop on top of that. They also have amazing drinks from Italy, like the Sicily Blood Orange Soda. I recommend you pair it with that. I know it's New York pizza, it's tough to rank, but where does this sit for you?
Definitely top 10.
I gotta agree.
It's all about what you're in the mood for. But I'm always in the mood for this now.
A lot of our legends today, they may be up there in years, but they don't want to slow down. Like, this is their life's passion. This is what they do. It's what they've been doing forever.
No signs of slowing down. No signs of slowing down. I only found out about this spot 6 or 7 months ago, so unfortunately, they didn't make it into my book. Keeps me up at night, because it definitely is in my top 100.
Part 2.
Part 2, but yeah, this place is legendary.
Come for the pizza, stay for the t-shirt. All right. Nico, we're at Meisel's Chocolate in Midtown, and you could just blink and walk past this place, but that would be a big mistake, right?
That would be a huge mistake. The chocolate here, amazing. The curation, incredible. But the person who owns this shop, Camilla Meisel, is just a one-of-a-kind, such a sweetheart, knows her Can I curse?
Yeah, she can curse.
She knows her stuff. The community loves her, and she loves the community back. Here we are.
All right, this reminds me of the chocolate shop from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where he goes and he buys the bar.
She decorates it every holiday. She's set up for Halloween. She takes a lot of pride in her decorating.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, pleasure. I came to New York in the beginning of 1980. We escaped from Poland, and 2 days later the martial law started, so the borders were closed, no communication with anybody. I came to Manhattan. A craziness every corner, yelling, people screaming, doing stuff. I stood up in a moment and I just said to myself, that's it. This is my city. I took over the shop in 1990. I'm from Europe, I'm from Poland. Everybody were cooking and baking. So I was watching this when I was a little girl. I have a photographic memory and it became a passion basically. During the COVID, no customers, I was alone in the shop. Yeah, I got in trouble with the landlord and I have difficulties to pay. A lot of people helped me. Brandon from Humans of New York opened for me the GoFundMe page. Also, Nico, New York, he advertised me. Joel Gergilo from NBC, they put me on the programs. This is such a deep and huge appreciation for people because people help me to continue and to stay over here.
So clearly you get a lot of visitors, right?
Yes, I do, and people really knows me. It's such a nice feeling. I love people, I love the connection with people, and it's the most important thing.
I'm curious, the chocolate, how much of this is baked in-house?
I bake all of my cookies. The truffles, I pay somebody else to do it for me, okay, because I don't have enough space. My favorite, dark chocolate pecans, hazelnuts, almonds, and then licorice. I have over 100 different types of licorice. All of the licorice are different shape. Each shape is going to taste different. You divide by unsalted and salted. I give you the canal houses. I like this one very much. And then I give you the herbal one. A couple of this one. This is spicy and slightly salted, okay?
Okay.
I give you some menthol licorice from Switzerland. Okay, here you go. And let me give you some chocolate. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just got 5-10 pounds of candy. And Nico, what an amazing woman.
The best, right?
Now we're gonna try some of these sweets on 6.5 Ave, New York's only hidden street. What's crazy is people come from all over the world for her licorice. She has licorice from so many different countries in there. I was dying to try some of her homemade chocolate. She just gave us a little bit of everything. I've never tried her chocolate.
It's so good.
It's really a lost art what she's doing in there because New York has plenty of candy stores, but how many of them are you gonna have the owner just sitting there and chatting with you?
There really aren't a lot of places like that in New York. She has stuff that you can't find anywhere else.
It's on the most unassuming street too. If she was closer to Times Square, I don't think she would have had any of those problems that she had. And you actually helped set up the GoFundMe.
We raised a good amount of money for her and she's very grateful. We're very grateful for her.
We all should be. That's like a true New York icon right there. I always love immigrant stories like that. Actually, it reminds me of my own mom. My mom's from Ukraine, so I know exactly what it was like. People who had to leave during the Cold War and restart their lives, and some of them have started tremendous businesses. She's just a prime example. Many of you are staying in Midtown Manhattan. If you walk in there, I promise you're gonna buy something. I promise you will find something unique, interesting, and tasty.
Go to Meisel's.
We've got Anthony and Son Panini Shop. This is a staple here in Williamsburg, and there's just tons of local characters here, right?
A good amount of the characters that you might recognize from my page came from Anthony and Son's Panini Shop. Irma, Charlie the Wolf, Big Joe Gambino, Mario, some really great Italian Americans.
All right, let's find some characters in there. That is a lot of sandwiches, a lot of paninis. I want to order the whole place.
That's an Italian shirt, sir. You can tell I'm an Italian place. I'm Antonio Curcio, and I own Anthony and Son Panini Shop. I came here as a tourist in 1988. 5 years later, I started Anthony & Son. It was a little bit fruit store, a little bit at a time. We went to grocery, then we went to organic. We started making panini, and that's what we do today. My personal favorite is the FDNY.
Fine, I'll do Godfather, I'll do FDNY.
Okay. So first you do the garlic bread, then we do a little bit vodka sauce. We do chicken cutlet, fresh mozzarella, melted the mozzarella a little bit. You want spicy or sweet? Spicy. And that's the famous sandwich, FDNY.
Pretty simple.
That's the best. So we do a little bit oregano, a little bit garlic, a little bit crushed pepper, and a little bit olive oil. I slice one after another.
How many different types of meat is this?
That's 6 different Italian compounds. That's the Godfather. Now, I put a fresh mozzarella, and you say you want spicy pepper, a little bit arugula. We're not done yet. Mortadella, prosciutto, and that's the last thing. That's the Godfather.
It's amazing how this used to be like an Italian store. They got sauces, they had everything you would need. Oh, we got plenty to eat right now. We got so much to eat. That guy knows what he's doing. I could just tell instantly. Nico opted for the healthy. I opted for the FDNY, the chicken cutlet, the mutts, the vodka sauce. So how many of these sandwiches have you had in your life?
A lot. I do eat here quite a bit.
Now that's a chicken cutlet. I mean, sure, you can find chicken cutlets all over the city, but with garlic bread, this amount of mutts and the vodka sauce.
They make the mozzarella here, they make the garlic bread here.
Like, this is standing out big time. Just one of these will put you to sleep. That's it.
I know. You can't eat the whole thing.
If I do, I gotta go take a nap like right now. I'm telling you, vodka sauce on a sandwich is my kryptonite, man. I could never avoid it. So you've known this family for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, Anthony's a character.
Yep.
100%. I love guys like that, and they're sort of like the staples that can hold a neighborhood together, right?
Oh, for sure. You know, you have like Emily's Pork Store down the block. You have Carmine's. You have Model T Meats. It's still got that Italian old school charm.
Yeah, it's true. Spots like this are tough to come by. There are famous delis in New York still, but there's less and less of them. And then when you look at this quality, you know, that list goes even lower. There's gotta be like top 10 sandwiches I've ever had in New York.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Oh yeah, it's the kind of spot where I could see like transplants, little hipsters coming in, but old school people coming in as well.
That's exactly what it is.
Perfect balance.
The reason why you know it's good is because all of the city workers come here. Firefighters, cops, garbage men, they all come to Anthony & Sons. That's how you know a place is good.
Now, if you enjoy watching this channel, you probably like to know where to go in New York and who to support. Well, Nico has a new book called New York Nico's Guide to NYC.
Boom, there it is. A lifetime in the making. 100 of some of my favorite spots in New York. Whether that's food related or retail, it's all in here. It's great for tourists and locals alike. If you're a local, a lot of these spots, maybe you've had their food before, but you don't know the amazing backstory. So Brooklyn, you got a map of Brooklyn. All my spots are highlighted on there. And then boom, Anthony & Sons. Photos, history, tips. That's the FDNY that John just ate. And that's my dog, Toby. The book is just full of some of my favorite places in New York that I think everybody should experience.
I've covered a lot, but not all the places in that book, so I'm gonna personally buy it and I'm going to use it in future videos. If you'd like to pre-order, depending when you watch, or order it, because it's coming out shortly, QR code here, link down in the description. Great stocking stuffer for Christmas as well. Nico, we're at Lily's Baked Goods, and this is an absolute institution in Harlem, right?
So yeah, Lily's has been around since 1965. He's been making baked goods for that long. And he's, I believe, in his early to mid 80s, and he's still working every day. Not a lot of people like that anymore.
No, definitely not. Yeah. Let's check this out.
My name is Alvin Lee Smalls. I'm 82 years old.
Hi, my name is Kellen Tiller Smalls, and I am partner here at Lily's Baked Goods.
Lily, can you tell us about the history of first how you got into baking pergola?
Well, I found this recipe in the newspaper about 60 years ago, and with the little experience I had, I played with it around and do this, change that. And for my blessing, it came out this way.
How long have you been in this location here in Harlem?
This location, 25 years.
In the beginning, there were a number of different struggles that had to do with funding. Black business couldn't get funded. So we've endured that. Then we endured a lot of change that happened during COVID, where we were providing door-to-door service, straight from the store, straight to your door. We are a destination on many of the tourist list of things to do and get to. We have a lot of neighborhood people. We have a lot of elderly people who've been with us for a very long time. We have an awful lot of Jewish patrons here that tell us that it's better than their bubbies. Alvin has created a dessert that fits in your hand, and that many people who never knew what it was before now know what it is.
Well, everybody should have at least once. It's the best. Fresh, good ingredients. For 6 years, I used the same brand of flour. I use pure apricot, pure raspberry.
Everything's at a premium. It's a premium dessert.
All right, we got some goodies from Lily. You know, every time I go there, I get a smile on my face.
Great people, great baked goods.
You know, Lily does his hamantash and his rugula different than your average Jewish bakery. I'm Jewish, you're Jewish. I have to say, he has elevated the game with his style. Probably some of the best rugula I've ever had in my entire life.
Yeah. His is always moist, it always tastes fresh.
Little raisin baked inside here, chocolate cream on top, like little sugar crystals baked in there.
Lily really knows what he's doing.
He's been baking since the mid-60s. He's been doing rugula since the 80s. I mean, to survive so many years in any location in New York, you have to be top-notch. New Yorkers are a picky bunch.
Yeah, he has a very, very devoted following. That's what gives a lot of these businesses their staying power, loyal customers.
That's how you stay alive in New York. The hamantash or the rugula.
The hamantash is great, but the rugula, there's like nothing better than the rugula.
Yeah. Lily is one of the last commercial bakers in New York making rugula. It's unique, it's different, you owe it to yourself to give them a try. The 50 best free things to do in New York City in 10 minutes. Here we go. Want to impress your friends? The best free rooftop view in the city is on the top floor of the Stavros Niarchos Library in Midtown. Head to the 7th floor and you can get a straight up shot of the Empire State Building and the skyline, no entry or having to buy a drink required. Do you want to take a time machine? Check out the TWA Hotel attached to Terminal 5 at JFK Airport. This used to be the TWA Flight Center, and it's a free ticket to the golden era of flight in the 1960s. Why not visit the only olfactory art gallery in the world dedicated to art that has scent? This hidden gem in Chinatown is completely free to pop into during opening hours, and you can sniff your way through all the pleasant aromas, or if you're feeling adventurous, the stinky ones as well. Who is buried at Grant's tomb? I'll let you answer that one, but the largest mausoleum in North America is open to the public and the final resting place of President Ulysses S. Grant and his wife. Greenwood Cemetery was one of New York's most visited landmarks, and we shot an entire video dedicated to showing you the famous sculptures and burial sites of this gem in Brooklyn. Completely free to stroll around if you're into the darker side of history. You don't really need this video to tell you to walk the Brooklyn Bridge, and while it's one of the most crowded tourist destinations in the city, it should be on every first-timer's list. Try to go earlier in the morning if you really want to take better photos and enjoy one of the most famous icons in New York. The Elevated Acre in Lower Manhattan is one of my all-time favorite secret parks. Take the nondescript escalator up and you're surrounded by big buildings and nature at the same time. There's also tremendous views of the East River and Brooklyn Bridge. The 9/11 Memorial is a must-see for any visitor to New York. The two fountains where the towers once stood are majestic, but also a reflective and poignant reminder of one of the saddest days in the country's history. Please, no smiling selfies here. The New York Public Library is a perfect rainy day drop-in. You can admire the ceiling murals upstairs, but the real winner here is the free Polanski exhibition on the ground floor, where you can see the original Winnie the Pooh and a copy of the Declaration of Independence. You can easily budget an hour inside. Times Square is quite obvious, but did you know every night from 11:57 p.m. to 12 a.m. you can watch The Midnight Moment, the world's largest digital public arts program. It's on 92 displays spanning 8 blocks. If you're a night owl, this is worth a quick stopover, as many tourists are completely oblivious that it's even going on. New York has tons of TV shows that need an audience, absolutely for free. I even once went to The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and it was a little bit surreal. Check the show's website for details. If you want to see SNL, be prepared to wait in line all day. The Irish Hunger Memorial, dedicated to the Great Famine, is one of those hidden gems that you have to see to believe. They imported all the grass and even an old cottage from the Emerald Isle and its location in Lower Manhattan makes this a great quick stopover to appreciate all the hardships that Irish immigrants had to endure on their journey to America. Lincoln Center Summer for the City offers a series of concerts and events outside of the historic music hall. This is an absolutely fantastic way to feel like a local and take in world-class music and culture. We have a whole video dedicated to Central Park. You could spend an entire day exploring America's most famous park, although bring your walking shoes, but at least visit once to find out why both New Yorkers and tourists are so in love with it. Most tourists walk the Brooklyn Bridge, but did you know the Manhattan Bridge has a pedestrian path as well? And you can't see the Brooklyn Bridge from the Brooklyn Bridge, but you certainly can from the Manhattan. New York is the fashion capital of the world, and the museum at FIT has a permanent collection of more than 50,000 garments and accessories dating from the 18th century to the present. They even recently had an exhibition that showed fashion inspired by food, which sounds right up my alley. Chelsea in Manhattan is home to many of the city's art galleries, and a tradition every Thursday night is opening night for the public with free wine and even food as well. Check out galleries.now.net for a full list of openings so you can plot an entire evening of art gallery hopping. Another great, absolutely free museum is the National Museum of the American Indian. Learn about the history of Native Americans with some interactive exhibits and plenty to learn for all ages. I can't believe more people don't know about the Elizabeth Street Garden in Soho. This gem of community sculpture garden is under threat of closure and has so many beautiful little nooks to just spend an hour or more relaxing. It feels like you're on some rich philanthropist's country estate. Greenacre Park in Midtown East is such a pleasant surprise. To find a 25-foot waterfall hidden in such a busy area. Haley Park also has a little waterfall, and there's something about these hidden parks in New York that just excite me as a local, because finding peace in the concrete jungle isn't always as easy as you'd think. Only 1 block from Washington Square Park, Washington Mews might be my favorite street in Manhattan. Originally used as a row of stables for horses in the 18th and 19th centuries, it's now part of NYU, and walking this cobblestone path feels like you've been transported to a lost New York City. Fort Tryon Park in Washington Heights is such a magical place to go for a walk. With beautiful views of the Hudson River and George Washington Bridge, it's a local's favorite. Added bonus, take a look at the Cloisters Museum from the outside. It's like staring at an old castle. The High Line is New York's worst kept secret, but I like to say it's my favorite tourist activity to do. Nothing quite like walking on an abandoned train line converted into a gorgeous elevated park. We have an entire video dedicated to the High Line if you want a more structured itinerary. I always said if money was no object, I'd have an apartment in the West Village, because you just can't beat the charming neighborhood vibes. Roaming the beautiful tree-lined blocks and admiring all the cute shops, cafes, and multi-million-dollar homes, Bushwick, Brooklyn is an incredible neighborhood to appreciate the city's street art scene. Take a self-guided walking tour, and you can use Free Tours by Foot's website to admire some of the Bushwick Collective and other artist murals. Another fun summertime activity is movie night in Bryant Park. Now, the lawn opens 3 hours early, and I recommend going early to grab the best vantage point. The Staten Island Ferry may be the most famous boat ride in the city. It's completely free. Board and sit on the right side to get a nice view of the Statue of Liberty. The Met 81st Street studio opened last year and is any traveler with children's dream come true. It's absolutely free, located downstairs from the Met Museum, and recommended for ages 3 to 11. It's very interactive and hands-on. During the warmer months, you can go kayaking for free on the Hudson River in Manhattan or East River in Brooklyn. Just sign up in advance online. Pretty surreal to experience the New York skyline for 20 minutes on board a kayak, one of my favorite free activities in this video. Enjoy a free concert at the Juilliard School, which is the world's best performing arts college. See the stars before they perform at places like Carnegie Hall. Check Juilliard's website for the calendar. Summer Stage annually presents nearly 80 free and benefit performances in Central Park and neighborhood parks throughout the 5 boroughs. Check the Summer Stage website for a list of what's free and what's paid, but it's first come, first serve, so plan on arriving early. If you've ever been tired of watching lectures on YouTube, go watch some famous and influential people talk at the New School. They have so many topics available, from economics to social justice and more. See their website for what's coming up. Grand Central Terminal is just full of history. The Constellation mural on the ceiling and the Whispering Gallery in the food court are just some of the fun things you can get into at one of the most beautiful train stations in the world. And after admiring Grand Central, why not walk a few minutes to the Ford Foundation building and explore their free atrium garden in the lobby? It's a tropical rainforest in Midtown Manhattan. Get a Big Apple greeter for free. Seriously, a local New Yorker will be matched with you based on your preferences and if they're available, to show you their favorite spots. No tipping allowed, crowd, consider it a local insider. Check out bigapplegreeter.org for more details. Holy Apostle Soup Kitchen accepts volunteers, including tourists, even for a day. I made a video about my experience there, and if you're into traveling and making a difference, you should consider it. Are you a baseball junkie and love history? Well, the original location of Ebbets Field, home to the Brooklyn Dodgers, is now an apartment complex. But outside of the apartment, you can find a plaque commemorating where home plate once stood. If you find yourself in Prospect Lefferts Gardens, take any baseball fan here for a fun surprise. There's not a lot of neighborhoods on this list, but I think there's something really magical and enchanting about Forest Hills Gardens in Queens. This area was based on the garden cities of the UK, and it feels like you stepped into a Harry Potter movie just walking around. A lot of tourists love going to the Free Gospel Mass in Harlem. What a great way to open the doors to some local culture, and there's 9 different churches that accept walk-ins on Sundays. Check out our latest Harlem food video for where to grab some grub when you're done. If you absolutely need to get some nature before or after your flight out of JFK in Queens, check out the Jamaica Bay Wildlife Refuge with 9,000 acres of open bay, salt marsh, mud flats, upland field and woods. And for bird watchers, nearly half the species in the Northeast have been spotted here in the last 25 years. Go see the Captain America statue located conspicuously in the lobby of a Bed Bath & Beyond in Sunset Park. Because we all need to be superheroes to survive a trip to that store. We've got a 2-for-1 special inside the Cultural Services building of the French Embassy. Upstairs is the Albertine bookstore, which besides being the largest French language bookstore in the US, has a beautiful interior with celestial mural above. Then head downstairs to see the Venetian Room, a rare surviving piece of New York's Gilded Age. The Little Red Lighthouse right under the George Washington Bridge is a bit of a trek to get to, but such a cool find. It's been there over 100 years and a great symbol of the city's maritime past. Portland Alley is what New York looks like in many TV shows and movies, since it's one of the top filming locations in the city. Well, you'll need to pay $2.90 to get here by SkyTram, but once you're on Roosevelt Island, it's free to explore this 2-mile strip of land with a lot of historical sites and epic views of the skyline. This is one of my favorite viewpoints in all of NYC. The Brooklynites Promenade is just a 15-minute walk uphill from the tourist mecca of Dumbo, and so much more local. This art installation was built on the 34th Street NR platform, and you can reach your hand up and have a light flash and music play as you compose your own music underground. In the basement of the New Yorker Hotel, check out the Nikola Tesla exhibit open to the public. The inventor spent the last 10 years of his life living in the hotel, and you can see photos and artifacts dedicated to the quirky futurist. If you're like me and you hate shopping for clothes, at least you can ride the old wooden escalators at Macy's. These are 100 years old and some of the last remaining ones in the world. New York City, a name that instantly brings many images to mind, many of them not so positive. There are so many myths floating out there about the Big Apple, and today I'm going to be debunking the most common ones. New Yorkers are rude. I think New Yorkers get a bad rap for lots of reasons, and being mean or being rude is near the top of the list. I just want to say, as far as hospitality is concerned, especially at restaurants, I find we have some of the best waiters, many of them making it a profession. And say what you want about tipping, but for customer service, I think New York is tough to beat at sit-down restaurants. Now, the people are a different story because they have that gruff exterior on the outside, especially in Manhattan, where everybody always seems like they're in a rush because, well, they are in a rush. And I didn't come up with this quote, but I agree with it. New Yorkers are kind, but not nice. Meaning, they won't be fake nice with you, but they'll be real. And if you're in trouble, you'll be surprised how quickly New Yorkers will come to your aid. Just don't waste their time or expect a lot of small talk. One little quirk is if you're lost and a New Yorker overhears where you're going, they may shout out which way to go as they keep rushing on by. That literally happened to me a week ago when we were filming in the West Village, and I couldn't find this little side street. Some girl walked by and said, "1 block that way." She just kept on hurrying along. Very New York moment. Now, you've probably heard the term before, dirty water dog, but what that actually means is the water in the vat has been seasoned with spices, giving it that darkish appearance. I will be the first one to jump up and exclaim that it is safe to eat street food in New York. I have had more of it than most, and I've never gotten sick. There are exceptions. I've heard the stories, I've read the reports about some unsavory practices at some carts, as well as a proliferation of unlicensed food vendors. But keep this in mind, at least you can see them while they prepare your food. At a restaurant, you have no idea what's going on back there. You know what you really need to worry about as a tourist? Not how sanitary the food is, but getting ripped off at a food truck. Because if the vendor does not list his prices, I have heard so many stories from all of you about getting charged $50 for 2 hot dogs and 2 Cokes. So if the price is not listed, make sure to ask before you order. New York can be one of the most expensive trips of your life if you don't do your homework. I mean, if you blindly just book things during the Christmas period, you're gonna spend more money on your hotel in one night than probably your flight costs. And the 2 biggest expenses you'll run into are airfare and lodging here. After that, you can make it work with a moderate budget. But for airfare, the best thing I can tell you is to pick an off season to visit. It's early March as we film this, and it's almost 60 degrees. I had to take my jacket off. Picking the shoulder seasons to visit is one of the best ways to save money on flights. The other being if you can get reward points through credit cards or frequent flyer miles. Also realizing that there's 3 area airports that you can fly into, Newark in New Jersey, LaGuardia, and JFK in Queens. And I say pick whichever one is the cheapest, because in the end, it really doesn't matter that much which airport you fly into. For hotels, the best tip I can give you is don't stay in Midtown Manhattan, or better yet, avoid Manhattan entirely. I have a good friend who's visiting soon with his kids. He's staying in South Brooklyn, saving a ton of money. He's gonna be walking distance to some of the best pizza in the US and under 30 minutes from Manhattan by subway. So if you are willing to stay just a little bit outside of the popular tourist areas, you are gonna save a fortune on hotels. As far as saving money on food and activities, well, I mean, you've come to the right place watching this channel. Hint, hint, we just did a video about the 50 best free things to do in New York, so definitely watch that if you want to save some money. And as far as food is concerned, we have covered so many budget, cheap eats, street food on the channel. Just look around. There's a lot of ways to save money eating out in New York. Now, going to sit-down restaurants, that is going to cost you. So what I would say is budget that in, but don't be afraid to grab some quick bites and cheap eats. This city is full of it. And while I'm not the biggest fan of them, if you absolutely must check off all the attractions of New York, getting one of the attraction passes will save you money. New York is just Manhattan. This myth really needs to die. And I'm not just talking figuratively. There are people that believe New York City only consists of Manhattan. When I moved out of Manhattan to Brooklyn almost 4 years ago, I can't tell you how many comments I got saying they were so sad I was leaving New York. And while people living in the tri-state area call Manhattan the city, it's just a figurative reference. New York City is actually 5 boroughs, and this came to pass in 1898 when New York County, which then included the Bronx, Kings County, Richmond County, and a part of Queens County were consolidated under a new city charter. Now, Manhattan does get most of the worldwide attention, which I understand. It is the icon. It's what you see in all the movies and TV shows. But you are just as much a New Yorker if you live in Forest Hills, Queens, or the South Bronx, or even Staten Island, as somebody who lives in Hell's Kitchen. And you may even hear the term outer boroughs, which refers to the 4 boroughs outside of Manhattan, but they are all still New York City. Getting internet access is a hassle if you're a foreign visitor. When you visit New York, having data on your phone is gonna make your trip so much easier, from ordering an Uber to takeout, from just finding directions off of Google Maps. You definitely need access to data. But data roaming from your home country is expensive, and spending the time at the airport to buy some rip-off package just isn't worth it. Central Park is New York's only green space. Now, I could understand how you'd come to that conclusion if you just stayed in a small bubble in Midtown. Heck, we're standing on a green space right now, the Elevated Acre, my favorite secret park in New York. And not only is Central Park not the only green space we have, but it barely cracks the top 5 in New York for size. Pelham Bay Park in the Bronx is actually #1. So while Central Park is probably the world's most famous park, it is certainly not the only one we have in New York. There are so many for you to go explore. Broadway tickets are very expensive. Broadway tickets are expensive if you only want to see the hottest shows or the newest shows. But if you have some flexibility, you can get some pretty good deals. There's always deals to be had with rush tickets, buying at the TKTS booth, or the Today Tickets app, or even just monitoring the secondary market sometimes. There's also 2 for 1 week, or better yet, see an off-Broadway show where you're always gonna save money. Except for Little Shop of Horrors. That is extremely expensive because Darren Criss and Evan Rachel Wood are in it right now. So there's exceptions to that rule too. Celebrities are everywhere. I actually think you are more likely to see a celebrity in New York than you are in LA, because in LA they're hiding in their cars, they're hiding behind large fences in front of their mansions. In New York, you'll see celebrities riding the subway. That being said, don't expect it unless you're stalking movie sites or going to a movie premiere. Heck, in my 13 years living in New York and all the years across the water in Jersey commuting in, I've seen celebrities twice. One time I saw Sean Penn walking near Port Authority, and a few years ago near my old apartment in the Village, I saw Jake Gyllenhaal walking on Houston Street. And that's many, many years here. So now you're all gonna tell me how you've seen celebrities in the comments and how it is common, but at least for me, and I think for most, don't expect it. The city never sleeps. Compared to most US cities, New York is the city that never sleeps. Well, it's the city that goes to bed later at least. Although I will say since COVID-19, a lot of that has changed. Many famous spots like Katz's Deli, Veselka, even many McDonald's do not stay open 24 hours anymore. So is New York really the city that never sleeps still? I would say no, but a lot of things are open late, and delis and bodegas, well, those are always gonna be 24/7. All New Yorkers are liberals. I like to stay away from politics on the channel, and this is the one time I'm gonna get into it without giving any of my personal views. New York does have an extremely liberal reputation worldwide, rightfully so. But just as an example, Lee Zeldin, a conservative Republican, won 30% of New York City's vote in his unsuccessful bid to win the New York State governorship less than 2 years ago, which was the highest amount for a Republican in 20 years. Almost 40% of Queens and 66% of Staten Island voted for Zeldin. So while the majority of New Yorkers are Democrats, not all New Yorkers are liberals. New York is all skyscrapers. Well, from where I'm standing right here, it might appear so, but if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you'll have seen us filming outside of Midtown Manhattan and Lower Manhattan, where the vast majority of skyscrapers actually are. Most people who live in New York aren't surrounded by skyscrapers on a daily basis. Sure, as a tourist, you'll be surrounded by them constantly, but according to Wikipedia, as of July of last year, New York has 316 completed skyscrapers that are at least 492 feet in height, more than any other city in the Western Hemisphere and third in the world behind Hong Kong and Shenzhen. So yes, New York has the most skyscrapers in North America, but there's plenty of locations where the only skyscrapers you'll see will be far away in the distance. The water is unsafe to drink. Now, I wouldn't recommend you go swimming in the East River or the Hudson River, but New York City's tap water, I think it's an unfair rap. New York gets its drinking water from 19 reservoirs and 3 controlled lakes spread across a nearly 2,000 square mile watershed. That watershed is located upstate in portions of the Hudson Valley and Catskill Mountains that are as far as 125 miles north of the city. In fact, the state is so confident in that water quality that the Department of Environmental Conservation has called it the champagne of drinking water. I don't think I would toast with New York City tap water during New Year's Eve, but it is quite safe to drink. This one really gets under my skin. New Yorkers only wear black. It's impossible to live in New York without a high-paying job. I would say it's impossible to live in New York in a trendy neighborhood without a high-paying job unless your parents or somebody else is paying your rent. So many newcomers arrive here and they have 3 roommates. Like, I lived with my twin brother to save money for 8 years in the Village. Or scary enough, they don't live below 14th Street or in Williamsburg and have to commute 30 minutes to get into Manhattan. Prices tend to go down a lot if you're willing to concede your own place or live outside of the popular areas. But it is still expensive versus other US cities. I will not deny that. New York is just a place you visit. To quote Fran Lebowitz, no one can afford to live in New York, yet 8 million people do. How do we do this? We don't know. If you really want to live here, you find a way. And you sacrifice space or location for all the amenities you get here until you find it too much of a hassle to continue doing so. Because hundreds of people leave New York every single day fed up with living here. And for many, there's no other place in the world they would ever consider calling home, and we call them New Yorkers.
Ever felt like New York just has too much to see and do? In this video, I'll be breaking down the 10 best attractions to visit. We've got the iconic ones and a few hidden gems you might have missed. Let's dive right in.
You can sit on a crowded tour bus, or you can be guided in a 1920s era car. I think a decision's pretty easy.
It's a 1930 Hudson Gray 8, the Hudson Company's first sports car. What do you say we get some photos in front of it?
Let's do it.
Okay, but before we do, I have some 20s accessories to get you in the mood. You're gonna be a celebrity for the next 50 minutes. This car gets a lot of attention. You're gonna get a lot of AOKs, thumbs ups, a lot of waves. Just think of them as paparazzi when you're the celebrities here.
My grandpa used to have a really old car and it smelled just like this one.
Arnold Rothstein was the king of New York gamblers. He loved to gamble. He ran casinos in Times Square, and he bet on horses upstate. Made a lot of money. Jimmy Fallon came up to the car in a rocket car center. We did a custom pickup and drop off for British supermodel Cara Delevingne.
Normally we visit New York City attractions. Today we are the attraction.
You have to be stuck in Midtown Manhattan traffic. This is the way to do it. I'm not even noticing a traffic. I don't think I've ever been in a car this old before. Are you?
No, well, my grandpa's, but I don't think it was this old.
Now that statue you see with a Tiffany clock, I think it's the largest Tiffany clock in the world. It depicts Hercules, Minerva, and Mercury, the gods of strength, wisdom, and speed.
That was like stepping back in time, literally and figuratively. I've never taken a driving tour quite like that one.
Just made us feel like we wanted to go back in time for real.
New York has dozens of boat tours, but I don't think any will give you the insights that the official NYC architecture cruise will. We're going to explore the 6th borough, the waterfront. This is very classy. It's a 1920s style yacht we're on. If you are into history, this is the boat tour for you. We have a real architect who is narrating the entire skyline as we go.
So we're going to be traveling about 30 miles, going all the way around the island of Manhattan. Two towers connected by a sky bridge. That sky bridge houses amenity space for the apartment complex, including a 75-foot lap pool. So you can swim back and forth from tower to tower, 300 feet deep. That green you see is patinated copper, very thin copper sheets, about the thickness of 2 pennies.
Something super unique about this tour is we are way up the Harlem River right now. I've never been on a boat this far up, and we're passing 18 bridges in total. We are wrapping back towards the Hudson River, and it feels like we're on a fall foliage cruise. It's beautiful views. Does it even feel like we're in New York anymore? I've driven over the George Washington Bridge hundreds of times. I have never gone underneath by boat. I'm even excited for this.
Tallest tower at Hudson Yard, to the left of the vessel and set back there.
Less than 30 people on board, intimate experience. I learned so much. It takes a lot for a tour to impress me. This impressed me a lot.
As a first-time tourist, there's a lot of pressure to visit an observation deck. Now, we did an entire video visiting all 5 in one day if you need an in-depth look at each of them, and I'll reveal my personal favorite at the end, but I think all 5 have some benefits. One World Observatory. This is the highest viewing point in the Western Hemisphere, atop One World Trade, and it's entirely indoors if you don't want to be exposed to the elements. I also think the elevator ride up is by far the best one in the city, showing you how New York was built. Its location at the bottom of Manhattan gives you some clear views of the horizon. My issue with it, I really think you need to step outside at least a little bit, and you don't have that option here. Next, the Empire State Building. This is the most famous building in the United States, maybe the world, so it's got that star factor, and I appreciate the Art Deco vibes all over. This observation deck has grown on me in recent visits. I think for history buffs, this is a can't miss. The Edge Sky Deck. Well, this wins the award for highest outdoor sky deck in the Western Hemisphere, and the views from the angled glass are quite unique. It gives you the feeling like you're floating in midair, and if you're willing to shell out $201 a person, you could do City Climb, where you literally lean off a skyscraper top of the rock. This is probably the most underrated observation deck because it only goes 70 floors up, which is the shortest vantage point, but the Danny DeVito of observation decks packs a big punch because it's right in the middle of the Midtown skyscraper scene, making you feel more part of it. And it's my second favorite. Summit One Vanderbilt. This is my personal favorite because you get what I truly consider an indoor attraction with glass mirrors and reflections everywhere and a few other neat rooms, and then an opportunity to go outside and still enjoy the skyline. Optional elevator ride ascent to the top if you're feeling daring, but all of these observation decks are bookable in the description, and it's really tough to go wrong with any of them. Now, you may be wondering, why is the High Line not in this video? Well, this is just paid attractions. We're gonna have a free attraction video coming up soon. Broadway is the world's most famous theater district, and I would say it can't miss when you're in the city. Even living here, I get excited to go, and Adriana and I just recently booked tickets to see MJ the Musical for the first time. Now, I'm a huge fan of 70s and 80s music, and I have to give them credit. The choreography and songs were on point. They play over 25 of Michael Jackson's greatest hits, and it's won some Tony Awards. But from musicals to plays, remakes of old movies like Back to the Future, there is something for everybody on Broadway. And if you want to learn more about attending a Broadway show, check out this video we recently filmed with a Broadway insider on the topic. There's few museums in the world you know exactly where they are just based off their name. The Louvre in Paris, the Smithsonian in DC, and the Met in New York. It's the largest art museum in the Americas and welcomes over 3 million visitors a year, and well, you could spend a whole day in there. Although in this video we shot last year, we show you how to do it right in just 2 hours. The Temple of Dender is my personal favorite, but you can find Van Gogh, Rembrandt, Vermeer, and the list goes on and on. Insider tip, head to the rooftop for a really amazing view of Central Park. And if you're a big fan of art, I recommend booking a guide. See the link in the description if you're interested. The symbol of American freedom, the Statue of Liberty. And this is probably the most famous attraction in the city. Now, I will note that visiting the statue in Ellis Island, which is included in the ticket, will eat up at least half a day. So it may not be worth doing if you have a very limited time in the city, but the whole experience can give you goosebumps, starting with taking the ferry over to Liberty Island and having the same view that millions of immigrants had approaching New York Harbor. And just admiring the statue up close is really special. But I've said this on many videos, if you can book a ticket to get inside of the crown, it is well worth it. Because walking up that narrow staircase and seeing the inner workings of the sculpture, capped off with a view through the crown, is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. But you normally have to book this months in advance, and you have to do it on the Statue Cruises website. And yes, you can see the statue for free by taking the Staten Island ferry, but if you can budget the time for it, it is certainly worth it. New York has world-class art museums and a world-class history and science museum. The American Museum of Natural History. Maybe you recognize the facade from Night at the Museum with Ben Stiller. I still think this is one of the best places for families with children to visit. What's not to love? I mean, who doesn't get excited about dinosaur fossils? Or how about the massive 21,000-pound model of a blue whale? And here's a little tip. Don't miss out on the brand new Gilder Center wing, which we featured on a video as one of New York's top new attractions in the past year. The architecture is breathtaking, and they've got some amazing add-ons like a live butterfly vivarium and an immersive invisible worlds experience, which do have extra admission charges. There's also an insectarium. They'll make learning fun, I promise. Families or anyone with a love for science definitely needs to give this a look. Where are my history buffs at? The intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum should be on your radar. Pun fully intended, because this is a decommissioned aircraft carrier that even served in the Pacific during World War II. Yep, this thing has stories. You're not just staring at photos on a wall. You are face to face with historic aircraft, or a prototype of the Space Shuttle Enterprise. How about my personal favorite, the Growler, a formerly commissioned submarine? You get to feel what it was like to live inside there. If you have an interest in military history, the Intrepid is a fantastic choice. If you want to see New York from a completely different perspective, then the iconic Five Bridges bike tour is the answer. It's a guided tour with a native New Yorker, Rick, who will be talking in your ear the whole time. You'll be e-biking over 5 iconic bridges, including the Williamsburg, Manhattan, and Brooklyn bridges. And while I'm someone that generally isn't that confident in biking in the city, Rick made it super simple, and I saw New York in a completely different light. You'll bike through a lot of neighborhoods that you probably wouldn't have visited otherwise, and you'll definitely get pictures and perspectives that no other tour will offer. And if this tour isn't for you, Rick also offers e-bike tours around Central Park and other famous spots in the city, so give his website a look. Tell him I said hi. I may be just a little bit biased here since I'm a Yankees fan, but a trip to Yankee Stadium is a true New York experience. Now here's a little secret the Yankees don't advertise too much. You can bring your own food into the stadium for individual consumption. So if you're on a budget, you can stop at a local bodega or deli and grab food to go. But they do have some fantastic concessions, like the 99 burger named after Aaron Judge, or a classic steak sandwich from LaBelle's. And well, the team lately hasn't been great, but it's still a fun time. Sit in the bleachers if you're young and want a more lively vibe. And don't sleep on the Yankees Museum inside. It's free and has some incredible memorabilia. Over the next 4 days, I'm going to show you every important thing you need to see and do while visiting New York City. But the best part is, as long as you watch this video all the way to the end, you won't have a single moment of stress, because I've planned out everything just for you. I've spent over a decade living here, and there are 3 important things first-time tourists need to know. Bring comfortable sneakers or walking shoes. You will need them. Nothing will ruin your trip faster than sore feet. You don't have to buy a Metro card anymore. All subways and buses take Omni contactless payment. Simply have a tap to pay enabled on your phone or a credit card with a chip. Tap it on any bus or subway entrance and you're set. And unlike London or Tokyo, you pay one flat fee, no tapping out required to exit. Check the weather forecast daily, including the hourly, because the weather here can change fast with the wind, rain, and humidity. Don't forget your umbrella. And there's one thing you need to know on day 4 of your trip that could ruin the whole thing if you're not careful. Talk more about that later. Day 1 will be concentrating on Midtown Manhattan. If you're ambitious, you could walk this entire route. For breakfast, a few options at different price ranges. TikTok Diner, right across the street from Penn Station. This place is that wild American diner you've seen in the movies. Open 24 hours, you could probably split one of their insane pancake or French toast plates between 2 people. Breakfast starts at $9.95 for 2 eggs any style and range up to $20. This place is a staple in Midtown and a viewer favorite. If you're on a tighter budget and just want something grab and go, Best Bagel and Coffee is a nice option. 2 eggs on a bagel starts at $5.95, and a bagel with cream cheese starts under $5. I recommend an everything bagel with scallion cream cheese for a true New York experience. Feeling a little more adventurous, Margon is a Cuban restaurant that's a bit of a hidden gem. Just a block from Times Square, they've got a very potent Cuban coffee and huge breakfast platters starting at around $10. This place is a vibe. From breakfast, walk to Times Square and take it all in. I recommend Father Duffy Square as a starting point to snap some photos near the Big Red Steps. This is probably the most famous destination in the United States. This could also be the moment if you want to go to a Broadway show during your trip to line up for the TKTS booth for discounted show tickets. Don't linger too long, as this is also where almost every tourist scam in New York occurs. We have an entire video dedicated to this, but if anyone tries handing you a CD, a bracelet, or Spider-Man asks to take a photo with him, keep on walking and don't make eye contact. Trust me. This is your first opportunity, but not your last on this itinerary for souvenir shopping. Grand Slam actually has affordable t-shirts, keychains, and other trinkets, which could be perfect to buy. If you're looking for the I Love New York theme, they're the spot to load up. You are less than a 10-minute walk to Bryant Park, and from late October to early March, it's home to the Winter Village, which is the best seasonal holiday market in the city, but it's also one of my favorite parks. Perfect for relaxing at a table, people watching, and soaking in New York. And a little bonus, it has the Big Apple's cleanest public restroom. You could practically eat off the floor in there. A bonus next to Bryant Park is the New York Public Library. This could be one of the best free things to do in the city. My wife and I love wandering this library between the reading rooms and the hallways. It's like being inside a free museum. And speaking of free museums, their Polanski exhibition on the ground floor is practically like walking into one. The original Winnie the Pooh, the Declaration of Independence, all on display inside. At this point, it's time you experience one of the city's best tourist attractions, an observation deck. Now, if you're absolutely on a shoestring budget, across the street from the library is the Stavros Niarchos Library, and they have one of my favorite free secret spots in the city on the 7th floor, a rooftop terrace that's open to the public and can scratch that skyscraper itch. But I say you take it one step further. My top pick, Summit 1 Vanderbilt. I visited all 5 of the paid observation decks in New York, and this one is my favorite. I even went before it opened to the public and talked to the artist Senzo Digital who designed it, and the rooms with reflecting glass depend on the sunlight or lack of it to change the experience. So you could go more than once and have a completely different time. I love how surreal it is, and the views from the outside aren't bad at all. For $20 extra, you can ride Ascent to the top, although I don't even think it's necessary. My second favorite observation deck is Top of the Rock. If the weather is nice, there's no beating it. At only 70 floors up, it is the shortest of the observation decks, so you'll feel more immersed in Midtown Manhattan. Tickets start at just $40, so it's also one of the least expensive options, and they added a new attraction called Beam, which lets you feel what it was like to be one of the builders of the skyscraper. Definitely not for those with a fear of heights. After your observation deck adventure, stroll over to Grand Central Terminal, New York's most beautiful transit hub. This is a must visit, and if you want to learn even more about it, join the official Grand Central Tour by Walks Tours, where you'll find out about the history and stories that make this one of New York's most iconic locations. Use this QR code to book it right now, as they tend to fill up fast. You've probably worked up an appetite. For lunch, here's a few options. You could walk downstairs and check out Grand Central's food court, which has quite a large selection. My favorite taco chain in New York, Los Tacos No. 1, has one of their 6 locations right across the street from Grand Central. Their Adobada pork tacos are my top pick, and even my Mexican wife, Adriana, is obsessed with them. At $5 each, they're not cheap, but worth it. The best street food in New York are at halal trucks, and Royal Halal is a bit of a sleeper. Their Bengali-style chicken tikka over rice for $9 is a steal, and one of my favorite grab-and-go lunches in Midtown. This would cost double inside a nicer restaurant. After lunch, walk or subway up to Central Park, start at 59th Street and Columbus Circle. Listen, you could spend an entire day roaming Central Park. I've done it. It runs over 50 blocks. You don't need to as a first-timer. Just soak it in a little. I'd advise walking to Sheep's Meadow to see the lawn and skyline views behind it, and also explore the area around Bethesda Terrace and walk in the arcade to see the archways and the only ceiling in the world that has Minton tiles. The fountain and pond are always a peaceful sight as well. We have an entire video dedicated to exploring Central Park if you need even more ideas. If you're not exhausted after all of this, a 15-minute walk away, you could add on the Met, one of the world's premier art museums. Admission $30. And if you want to know how to see it quickly, we shot a video with my old art history professor, and he's gone weekly for decades. But you could spend an entire day inside if you wanted. It's one of the cultural gems of the city. Here are some dinner options in the Midtown area. Sarge's Deli. This is my all-time favorite Jewish deli, and it's not named Katz's. Sarge's has a way more local vibe, and their pastrami and corned beef sandwiches are massive. But they actually have tons of different diner options, so soak in this local icon in Murray Hill that isn't swarmed with tourists. Easy Paella and Tapas. This is a quirky dinner choice in Hell's Kitchen. This fusion of Venezuelan and Spanish food has the city's only paella burrito, but their tapas and sangria are fantastic. It would make for a cozy little date night too. John's of Times Square. This is not the only pizza spot I'm mentioning in the video, but it's the only one that's inside of an old church, and their location just a few blocks from Times Square is perfect if you have show plans afterwards. And the pizza, delicious. Here are some nighttime options. Attend a Broadway or off-Broadway show. You won't be too far from most of the Broadway theaters if you decided to buy discounted tickets earlier at the TKTS booth or in advance before you arrived in the city. You could always save this for another night as well. You could head for a rooftop bar. My pick, Beast and Butterflies. Of all the rooftop bars I've covered in the last 5 or so years, this one has gotten the most attention from the viewers. Located inside the M Social Hotel past the lobby, they have a stunning view of Times Square and really tasty drinks and food to boot. Unique would be an understatement, and this may be the only rooftop bar I can think of where children are welcome. New York has plenty of jazz clubs, but Birdland really stole my heart. I've been back after filming there for my anniversary and recommend it to many of my friends and family visiting as well. You can even do dinner and drinks here if you'd like, as waiter service is included. The performers are top-notch. Today we'll be focusing on Lower Manhattan, or downtown as it's known by locals. Let's get moving with some cool breakfast choices. Our budget option is Leo's Bagels. This could be the most popular bagel spot in Lower Manhattan. I've seen long lines here. I recommend ordering in advance on their website to skip said line. A cream cheese bagel will run you $4.75. They're fresh, hand-rolled, and you won't be disappointed. Pearl Diner. This reminds me of the diners I grew up with across the Hudson in New Jersey. A little hole in the wall that's been around for more than 50 years. 10 to 20 bucks will go very far here. You'll enjoy the nostalgic vibes. We'll start at the saddest memorial in the city, dedicated to the day when the city changed forever, September 11th, 2001. The fountains lie where the two buildings used to stand. It's a spot for reflection, so please, no smiling selfies. As an extra add-on, you can go to the National September 11 Museum, and I had never gone until this past year. I've got to tell you, it brought back memories from decades ago. Admission $33, and I will warn you, some of it is graphic and realistic. They have tissue stationed in many of the rooms, so make sure you're prepared. But if you can handle it, it's an important stop to really understand what this city has gone through. The Oculus is one of the cleanest transit hubs in New York, and it looks like you're inside a spaceship. It's also home to a mall, which is very expensive, but at a minimum, I'd stop inside for a photo, as it's so aesthetically pleasing. Fun fact, Spanish architect Santiago Calatrava intended it to resemble a dove leaving a child's hands. Do you see it? A few photo spots for you that are nearby. Charging Bull. There's always a line for this, but they say rubbing the bull's assets brings financial luck, but don't expect it to lower your hotel bill. Fearless Girl. I'm a fan of this statue, which was installed in 2017. Fearless Girl is meant to send a message about workplace gender diversity. You can also snap a quick photo of the New York Stock Exchange, which is the world's largest stock exchange, although they do not offer tours to the public. Not a lot of Americans even know about Federal Hall, which is where the United States began. On April 30th, 1789, George Washington was sworn in as the first president of the United States here, and it's a free museum now run by the National Park Service. Certainly worth a visit for my history buffs out there. Now let's walk down to Battery Park. If you have kids or just a kid at heart, ride the Sea Glass Carousel, which is one of Manhattan's best little hidden gems. Just $6 for a spin in this mock aquarium. I've never seen anything like it. Walk over to the Staten Island Ferry, which is free. I want to reiterate, do not buy a ticket from anyone here. The boat leaves about every half an hour, board and sit on the right side as you walk on because you'll be passing one of the best views in New York, the Statue of Liberty. Absolutely for free. This is both a local and tourist favorite. The whole round trip will be about an hour once you arrive to Staten Island. Just turn right around and reboard to head back to Manhattan. Now, I did not include a trip to the Statue of Liberty and Liberty Island here. You could totally do this in Ellis Island, but you'd eat up more than half a day. If you want to know how to do it, check out our video on the whole process right here. When you arrive back in Manhattan, go for a walk on Stone Street. The cobblestones are recreated for how New York looked back in the 1600s. This was home to the city's first breweries, and you can still stop for a beer at one of the many restaurants. It feels like Harry Potter world. Who's up for another hidden gem? This one is my favorite, the Elevated Acre located just up the stairs at 55 Water Street, and it provides incredible views of the East River and Brooklyn Bridge. I've never taken anyone here who wasn't completely shocked that a little urban oasis could exist in the middle of the tall buildings of Lower Manhattan. Get ready to impress your friends or family. Alright, it's time to regroup. We'll walk Uber or Subway to Chinatown, starting at Doyer Street. This is the most Instagrammable street in Manhattan, and it's also home to Bloody Angle, the sharp bend in the middle of the road. This was once a favored site for assassinations by rival Chinese gangs, and today, it's home to some of New York's best Chinese food. Who's up for some lunch? Your first choice, tasty hand-pulled noodles. This could be Chinatown's best outdoor seating option with an amazing view, and it's hard to go wrong with any of their dumpling choices, which are affordable at around $7 for a plate. If you've never had rice noodles before, Tony's is an excellent place to begin. Also fast and affordable. I was introduced to this by my Chinese-American friends Ben and Ming, and I've been hooked ever since. Deluxe Greenbow. This is a locals pick for the best soup dumplings in Manhattan. The seating is communal style, and it's everything you'd want in a Chinatown experience. Fast service and delicious food. Order the steamed pork and crab mixed tiny buns starting at $9.95. This place is cash or Venmo only. If you have room for dessert after any of those spots, across the street is the original Chinatown Ice Cream Factory. An absolute staple in the neighborhood, and they have exotic flavors like lychee, so come open-minded to try something new. If you want to dedicate more time to Chinatown, we have an entire compilation video with hours of options. You could eat away an entire day here if you wanted. Time to walk off that food coma or subway taxi if you're tired to Soho. Starting at the Pearl River Mart, this legendary store has one-of-a-kind items imported from Asia. Fashion, snacks, all at a great price. This is more fun to me than going on a shopping spree to some bougie high-end shops on the same street, which if that's your jam, feel free because you'll be right there. Let's take a photo opportunity on Green and Grand Street. If Soho was characterized by a single street, I'd say this is it. So snap a picture to commemorate your quick journey through it. I'm gonna offer one more detour here. If you skip dessert in Chinatown or just want a unique gift to bring home, Dominique Antle Bakery is incredibly famous, and if you want coffee or some sweets, pop in and enjoy their unique creations, like the Cookie Shop. No alcohol, just a sugar rush. Or buy some of their sweets to take back home with you wherever you live. If you have any energy left, walk north through Greenwich Village and hit up Washington Square Park, which has always been a cultural mecca. You'll likely run into some live music, and for people watching, it's unmatched. And a fun Easter egg, you can see the Empire State Building through the Washington Square Arch if you look directly through it from the fountain. Take a break, you've earned it, because for dinner, I've got a wide range of choices tonight. Starting with Burger Joint. The late Anthony Bourdain was a big fan of this spot. Located inside the Thompson Central Park Hotel, it's a bit of a speakeasy vibe if you can find it. I love their burgers, though they won't come cheap at $12.25 for a single patty. But trust me, they're worth it, and the interior feels more East Village than Midtown. If you want to explore Koreatown, Kobe Q inside Food Gallery 32 is my wife Adriana's and my favorite fast Korean barbecue spot in the area. Their barbecue rice bowl with pork is our go-to, but there's a lot of variety and you can eat at one of the many other vendors as well inside the mall. Jongro is a sit-down Korean barbecue spot on a street with lots of them. The prices are competitive, and it's a nice group activity as all the meat is cooked for you by the staff. I recommend reservation in advance. If you want something a little more upscale, Linden's in Soho is so simple, yet the food is completely on point. They've managed to maintain a healthy menu with fresh food. My wife and I have had amazing experiences here. There wasn't a single item we didn't love. Here are some nightlife pairings to go with your dinner choices. If you have dinner in Midtown, hit up Rudy's Bar and Grill in Hell's Kitchen. This is my all-time favorite dive bar, open since 1933. The beer is cheap, their blonde ale is $3, and every drink comes with a free hot dog. Yes, a free hot dog. I love it. These prices are straight out of 2000. Plus, it's the perfect blend of local characters and tourists. If you want to explore the Village Underground is a legendary comedy club. I saw Pete Davidson here before he blew up, and you never know who's going to walk through those doors. If you do stay in the area, check out McDougal between Bleecker and West 3rd. Now, this is a younger crowd, but there's so many bars on this street, as well as late-night eats, so you really can't go wrong if you want to party well into the night. Last call in New York, 4 a.m. On to day 3 of your New York trip, we've got 2 options for breakfast. Clinton Street Baking Company has been voted as one of the best brunches in the city, known for their pancakes, French toast, and other wild brunch-like creations. I highly recommend a reservation here in advance. Breakfast entrees run from $18 to $22 and are very Instagrammable. If you want something a bit quicker, a bit more authentic, Russ & Daughters is one of those iconic New York institutions that actually lives up to the hype. Walk in, grab a ticket, and then order a bagel with their Nova salmon. I'd go with a classic bagel and lox sandwich for $17. No, this is not cheap. Yes, this is absolutely worth it. They also have a cafe a few blocks away if you want a sit-down version of this. I now take a subway, taxi, or Uber to Pier 11 Wall Street. And very few guides are going to suggest this, but I want you to take the NYC Ferry for only $4. Download the NYC Ferry app to pay by phone. As you cross the East River, you will get an incredible look at the Brooklyn Bridge and arrive in about 5 minutes. You'll be right in the heart of Dumbo versus the subway, which will require a longer walk. And if you have more time and want to see even more ways to utilize the ferry, which is one of the most underrated things you can do as a tourist, watch my video on the topic. I encourage you to stroll around Brooklyn Bridge Park for all the photo opportunities with the Brooklyn Bridge and the Manhattan skyline. It's truly one of the most beautiful areas of the city. And while you're there, head over to Jane's Carousel, especially if you have kids. I'm not sure there's a carousel in the world with a better backdrop. Built in 1922, this wooden 48-horse carousel is a masterpiece. All right, if you've seen that cliche photo of the Manhattan Bridge that everybody takes, it's right here at Washington and Water Street. I won't stop you from doing it, but no, you may have to jockey for position or just Photoshop everyone out afterwards. Only a few steps away from that photo spot cluttered with tourists is something I like way more. The Dumbo Walls, where local artists created 8 outdoor murals in a 4-block stretch. This is where you can get some really cool photos and support some local artwork at the same time. If you're a chocoholic or just want some really sweet gifts, Jacques Torres Chocolate is your spot. You can even order hot chocolate to carry on your way around Dumbo. Highly recommended. For lunch, there are so many tasty options in a small area, starting with Giuliana's Pizza. This is the original location that Patsy Grimaldi made famous. They use the same oven, which, as any local knows, is the most important thing. It is packed with tourists, but I do think it's one of those places that is worth it. You can wait in line to sit indoors, or just take a pie to go and eat it by the pier. They don't sell slices here, keep in mind, so this is perfect for sharing. Lucky Rabbit Noodles is quite literally a hole in the wall just under the Manhattan Bridge, and if you're a vegetarian, they have some incredible Asian fusion options. Seating is limited, but the taste certainly isn't. While I'm not generally a fan of the Time Out Market, Bark Barbecue on the top floor is an exception. Their Dominican Texas barbecue fusion is insanely delicious, albeit pricey, but if you want to try some American barbecue with a twist, it's worth waiting in their typically long lines for some of their famous brisket, which has taken social media by storm. And as an added bonus, walk outside on the Time Out Market rooftop for one of the best free views of Manhattan. After lunch, I want to encourage you to walk the Brooklyn Bridge back. The view is a lot nicer walking towards the Manhattan skyline for photos. This should take about 30 minutes. If you're exhausted or not in shape for this, you could easily take the ferry back to Pier 11 for only $4. After you cross the East River, you'll be about a 10-minute stroll to South Street Seaport. This historic area has some of the oldest buildings in the city and includes the largest concentration of restored early 19th century commercial buildings in New York. If you want a little hidden gem, go to Cannon's Walk. This hidden alleyway literally feels like you've stepped back into the 19th century. If you have a little extra time, head for Pier 35 and take a photo or video at the Pier 35 swings with the Manhattan and Brooklyn bridges perched in front of you. There's no view quite like it on the planet. Then head on a subway or Uber to the Roosevelt Island tram station. Or if you want to test out Revel, an all-electric car fleet, use this code for 70% off your first ride. Now for the cost of a subway swipe, take the Roosevelt Island Skytram above the East River. This feels like an attraction, but you'll land on a small island that's technically part of Manhattan, but feels a world away. Walk the perimeter of the island or rent a city bike. Start at the Smallpox Memorial Hospital, which is a great example of Gothic Revival architecture and shows the dark history of the island. Other stops you should include are the Franklin D. Roosevelt Fort Freedom State Park, and at the northern tip of the island, the Roosevelt Island Lighthouse. If you want to spend even more time exploring the island, we have a whole video dedicated to it where we spent the day there with a local. Check it out. Now you can take the tram or subway back to Manhattan and finally take a break, or if you or your partner insist on some more shopping, there is a nearby Bloomingdale's, just throwing that option out there. This is a really exciting night with your dinner options. If you want to stay in the area, NR in the Upper East Side is part cocktail bar, part ramen haven. I've never seen a place like this. They're also known for their oysters. This is a great date night kind of vibe for my couples watching. If you need a nightcap in the area, head to UES, an ice cream shop that doubles as a speakeasy bar. Seriously, you could just get ice cream and have no clue. Walk in, say you want to see the storage room, and well, they'll take you back to this Frank Sinatra themed speakeasy with excellent libations. Any longtime viewer of this channel knows my devotion to Bleecker Street Pizza. This was my go-to slice shop in my decade living in the Village, and it's been a hit for many of my tourists watching because of the Nonna Maria slice. Parmigiano Reggiano cheese, fresh mozzarella, and large dollops of garlicky, tomatoey marinara sauce. I'm getting hungry just talking about this slice, but for a budget option, head here for a few slices or just buy a whole pie. If you're staying in the Village after dinner, head to the Folly. This was my favorite local bar when I lived just a few blocks away. It's themed after a ship, and it's on Houston Street, which is the perfect getaway to even more nightlife in the area. If you haven't realized it by now, I'm really into hidden places. Sakagura is inside an indescript building in Midtown, and down a set of stairs, you'll find this Japanese restaurant with authentic tapas-style Japanese dishes perfect for sharing. And they have 260 different kinds of sake, an incredibly memorable New York experience. Well, if you take it easy on the sake, that is. Here's an after-dinner drink and entertainment option not too far away. The Freaky Tiki is for my Broadway karaoke fans. A kitschy Hawaiian-themed bar with great food as well. And there's a host who sings, plays the piano, and takes your selections. You even have the opportunity to sing along as well. But if you want show tunes or just oldies, tip the host, and you're in charge. My wildcard pick for dinner, Ukrainian East Village restaurant. Imagine you had a long-lost Ukrainian grandma who invited you over for dinner. That's the vibe of this place, and the food is hearty and plentiful. Come with a big appetite for pierogies and more. Right next door is the Sly Fox. This is one of the best and oldest dive bars in the East Village. Cheap, no frills, and definitely a vibe. The perfect ending to a long but fun day. We're going to assume for the sake of this video that you're flying out day 4, so here's a half-day itinerary with a bonus. You know those rainbow bagels you've seen everywhere around New York or social media? Well, Tompkins Square didn't invent them, but they may as well have, because that's their vibe. They have all sorts of funky cream cheeses and bagel styles like the French toast bagel, which you just have to try, or the birthday cake cream cheese. kids would love this spot as well. They have great breakfast sandwiches if that's your thing. We've had some souvenir shopping options already, but First Team Vintage is just amazing. A small shop dedicated to New York and American sports jerseys, t-shirts, and jackets. If you want a cool souvenir to show off back home, this is where I would personally go get it. Remember I told you on the last day I had something you had to know about? It's this alley, Freeman Alley. Enter on Rivington between Bowery and Christie. This is what people think New York looks like in the movies when, fun fact, there's very few alleys like this in Manhattan. So you can pretend you stumbled onto something edgy when in truth, there's an expensive restaurant and art gallery here. Funny how that works. A bonus, if you have more time on day 4, I recommend taking a Harlem tour with Lawrence, one of the only people I've ever met who's lived in all 5 New York boroughs, and of course he grew up in Harlem. He is a gem and one of the best tour guides around, period. If you're flying out of JFK, fun little bonus as well, head for Terminal 5 and the TWA Hotel. It's like stepping back in time. You can just roam the lobby and see what it felt like in the golden age of flying.
Traveling to New York City can be stressful if you don't pre-plan, and in today's video, I'm gonna share some travel mistakes you want to avoid on your next trip here. Some of these are really common. Here we go. I want you to imagine you spent all this time and money to fly to New York City, and you get to the airport and you didn't plan how you were gonna get to your hotel. This is actually more common than you would think. The New York City airports, they're not like Amsterdam where there's one train that'll take you into the city center. Okay, wait, there is a JFK, the Long Island Railroad, $5 city pass, major travel hack a lot of people don't know about. But when you come to the area airports, plan out how you're getting to your hotel. Will it be a taxi? Will it be an Uber, Revel, or Lyft? From LaGuardia, the options are a little bit more limited, and that's why I always urge people to plan ahead how they're getting to their hotel, because that's just one less stress you don't want to deal with on your first day in the city. If you need to buy a Metro card in New York City and you're not from the United States, listen carefully. If you're paying by credit card, it's going to ask you for a zip code. Put in 99999. That's 5 9s, and you'll be okay to complete that transaction. I've heard about some foreign tourists getting a little bit confused what they're supposed to do because they don't have an American zip code. Just one less mistake you're gonna make here. See our subway guide video about using OmniPay? It is so easy. Another mistake, walking through Central Park and not thinking you are gonna smell horse manure. It could be pretty strong. The clockwise subway door mistake. I actually have to thank Action Kid for bringing this to my attention. Now, when you go underground to the subway and you see those high entrance moving gates, if you swipe and you go the wrong way, it's gonna lock you out and you're gonna lose that credit. Now this is confusing because you actually have to go counterclockwise inside of these gates, and don't even get me started on trying to bring luggage through them. So my best advice is if you see those and you're a little confused, just use a regular subway entrance. I don't even like using them that much, or just watch other people going through them first. But yes, there are ways you can lose money on that. Thank you, Action Kid. It is a mistake not to look where you're walking in Manhattan. Maybe you come from some small town or city even that really is clean. New York City, not so much the case. Some owners don't clean up after their dogs, and there's all sorts of trash and random litter on the sidewalks. You are asking for trouble if you walk around Manhattan in flip-flops. Just don't. And always look where you're walking, because you're guaranteed to step in some weird stuff if you don't. And speaking of watching where you're walking, be extra careful when you're walking down the steps on the New York City subway. When it's wet, when it's raining, when it's snowing, it can be very slippery. And some of the steps just aren't in good shape. They can be a little bit uneven. Be extra careful there. There are some apps that I think would be a mistake not to have on your phone if you are visiting New York City. And we're gonna talk about 2 of them right now. The first, Google Maps. Now wait, everybody has Google Maps, at least most people do, but there's one little trick that so many of you told me about that I even didn't mess with in the past, and that's downloading a map of New York City offline. And it's actually really simple to do with the app. This way, in theory, you don't need data service when you're here because the GPS is gonna work no matter what. Even if you have data, let's say you're in a location that doesn't have cell service, this is still clutch. I just started using the app Seated, and while we cover a lot of cheap eats on the channel, this is a way to save some money eating at more expensive places. Seated shows you restaurants on a map that offer you a percentage of your bill total right back to you after you eat. And I could show you this example here, Pando 39 near Bryant Park in Manhattan, offering 20% back. So let's say you split dinner and drinks for 4 people and it comes out to $200 pre-tax and tip. You'll get $40 in credit right to your phone. You either have to share a photo of the receipt or you can pre-link your credit card. And you can use these credits for Airbnb, for Ubers, for Amazon gift cards. There are so many options here. And as a special bonus, use my referral code JOHN28 to get 20% off your first meal. So it's really cool because if I don't know where to eat, I just check Seated and see like what are the best percentages nearby. And wherever I go, I can read the ratings and make a little money back. It would be a mistake to only walk or take the subway while in New York. There's a lot of cool alternate transit options. We'll start with the ferry. Now, we just shot a video rightfully titled, "This $4 boat ride is New York's best kept secret," because it kind of is. The NYC ferry is used by commuters and not too many tourists. And the one route I think needs to be a requirement is from Pier 11 Wall Street over to Dumbo in Brooklyn. It takes less than 5 minutes and in my opinion is worth 5 times the $4 charge. There's also the route to Throgs Neck in the Bronx, which as far as I'm concerned, is the best cheap sightseeing option in the city. Check out that video for more details. A lot of times in New York City, buses are a good option, especially if you're staying outside of Manhattan, but even in the city, going cross town, let's say through right here in Central Park. You can also ride via OmniPay or with a Metro card, and the routes are available on Google Maps, so if you're hesitant about the subway, consider the bus. I haven't really given enough love to city bikes on the channel, and after we shot a video about the best things to do in New York in the summer, where we biked all over the city, I didn't realize how far the city's bike lanes have come. Now, I would not advise renting a city bike if you are a novice. If you have experience biking in bigger cities, I think you could handle it. It's a cheap way and it's a healthy way to see New York without having to rely on mass transit. But I do advise being careful about other motorists and maybe more so pedestrians in the city not paying attention to that bike lane. It would be a mistake to only eat in Times Square when there is a great neighborhood right next door in Hell's Kitchen. I understand if your hotel is in Times Square and you're tired, you've been sightseeing all day, just seeing the Olive Garden makes you feel at peace, but don't do it. All right, I admit I am a sucker for Bubba Gump Shrimp's happy hour. It was pretty good. But if you just walk 2 avenues over, you will hit 9th Ave. And 9th Ave, I think, is one of the most underrated food strips in all of Manhattan. Easy Paella, one of my favorite restaurants in the city, is there. Zorali, which is a Dominican lunch spot, pretty cheap, also on that stretch. So walking 9th Ave, you're gonna feel more like a local New Yorker. You're gonna go to restaurants that aren't all chains, and you're gonna have more of that authentic experience, which I think is why you're traveling to New York in the first place. This one's controversial, but I think a mistake in Central Park is taking a horse-drawn carriage ride. Now, I understand the appeal of this. It's been around since the 19th century. You've got that vision of the romantic horse-drawn carriage. But keep this in mind, last summer, one of the horses collapsed from heat exhaustion. There's other similar stories out there, so I'm not gonna tell you what to do, but really do your homework on this practice. I personally wouldn't take one of those carriages, and I don't think your New York trip is incomplete if you do skip them. Instead, if you want the same tour in Central Park, I recommend a pedicab. Now you might be thinking, wait, didn't you mention pedicabs as a potential scam in one of your videos? And I did, but the ripoff there would be just jumping blindly on a pedicab in Midtown Manhattan without negotiating a price first, because some of them are very costly on a per minute basis. But what I really recommend are some of the top pedicabs in the city who do specialized tours. It would be a mistake not to pre-book an observation deck if you have a very tight timeline. And I actually got this from a viewer. Not sure if this counts, but we booked the Summit One Vanderbilt a few weeks in advance for 9 a.m. today. We were there 15 minutes early in the second group to go up, and it was really chill. As we moved through the rooms, it was even empty in a few of them as people were spread out. All right, this is very solid advice, not just for New York City, but for like theme parks in general or any attractions. If you want to make sure you get some of the best photos, outside of going with all the crowds at sunset, go first thing in the morning, especially if the weather is cooperating. If you're in that first group, you will get the best pictures, especially at a spot like Summit One Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt, which I've heard lately is getting super crowded. Excellent advice. It would be a mistake not to utilize rush tickets for Broadway shows if you really want to save a lot of money. Now, we have harped time and time again about the TKTS booth in Times Square to get discounted tickets for Broadway shows, but what we really haven't talked about are rush tickets, which in the past involved going to the theater the day of the show in the morning and getting in line for unsold seats. Now, some select theaters still do this, but many now have digital lotteries. And how it works is the day before the show, you simply enter your name on the app, and it's just like going to the theater early. I found this article at BroadwayWorld.com, and it's a really good breakdown of each show's policies. I do have a warning about this. Most of them have a cap of 2 tickets, so if you're a big group, it could be tricky, and sometimes they'll even separate you from the other person that you're with. This is actually perfect if you're by yourself. Personally, I find Hamilton the musical to have the coolest one. They offer $10 rush tickets, $10 like Hamilton, the bill. You could attempt rush tickets from a box office or app in the morning, and if that fails, go to the TKTS booth a few blocks away if you have the time and you're just dead set on cheap tickets. And I am curious if any of you seen Back to the Future yet. I'm really wondering how that show is. Going to Broadway is an iconic New York experience, but there's so much that can go wrong. Today we'll be sharing the biggest Broadway mistakes to avoid, from getting frustrated overpaying for tickets, the agony of choosing the wrong show, and a sneaky scam that even experienced theater goers regret falling for. You don't want to miss this, trust me. And joining me for this special video, Billy Hipkins, a Broadway lifer.
I'm a lifer. I was in a Broadway show a long time ago. I've been working in wardrobe on Broadway for 25 years. I've worked on 32 different productions in the wardrobe department. Currently right here at the Winter Garden Theater doing Back to the Future, where I'm dressing the stars, Doc and Marty.
Billy, we are standing right in front of the doors to the theater, and I think a big fear of first-timers especially is choosing the wrong seats for a show.
Well, I would say there's a difference between seats for a musical and seats for a straight play. Now, say if you're coming to Broadway to see Sandra Bullock in a play, sit down front. You want to get a good look at a celebrity, sit close. The thing is, though, most stages are a little higher than your eye level, so you're going to be sitting looking up. If you're very close, you're going to see a lot of shoes. For musicals, I always like to say sit in the front of the mezzanine. Because we dance, we have patterns on the floor, so you get a better overview, and the lighting, the way it plays off the set and the floor and stuff, you're better off upstairs. The other thing I'd say is, the further to the side you are, and every theater has a seating chart. If you're on this side, you might miss what's happening up in the corner over there. You might be looking into the wings a little bit on that side. So center is always better. Further back can be a good thing on a lot of shows. Here's the other thing I'll tell you in front rows. If you can see the cast can see you. They see everything everybody does in that auditorium. So if you're gonna sit up front, you better be wide awake and attentive, because trust me, they're gonna talk about you when they walk off stage.
Now, Billy, one thing a lot of people are afraid of, prices. Broadway can be expensive, but we've got some methods for you to save money, and the first one are rush tickets, which in the past involved going to the theater the day of the show in the morning, getting in line for unsold seats. Now, some select theaters still do this, but many now have digital lotteries. And the day before the show, you enter your name on an app. In this link right here, every single show on Broadway and their rush policies are listed. So for example, Back to the Future, where Billy works, you can get $40 rush tickets at the box office day of the show, or $45 if you're lazy and want to do a digital rush.
I will tell you, most of the rush tickets are the first couple rows, so again, you're going to be looking up.
Another thing to look out for with rush tickets is typically the limit is only 2, and sometimes they even separate you from the other person.
There's also cancellation. I mean, every day there will be a line forming as soon as the box office opens, and as tickets are canceled by people rescheduled, they'll resell at full price, but they will sell some of our better seats day of. There are ways to do that if you feel like standing at the box office at any given show. On a big hit show with hot tickets, if the box office is going to open at 10, by 9, stand outside.
Something else to look out for with rush tickets is they also could be obstructed or limited view. You're basically at the mercy of the house. You could get lucky, you might not get the best seats, but you're gonna get a good price. That's the important thing.
Now they will tell you if they're obstructed view, they'll let you know that. Now here's the thing. Obstructed usually means there's a column that's going to be in your view. They'll tell you that. But in a lot of the theaters, where if you're toward the back of the orchestra, the mezzanine is over your head. You have a view of the stage, but you might miss the top of the set. So on shows where action happens way up there, further back you are, you may be obstructed in that way, that you're under the overhang of the mezzanine. That is something to ask the box office. Is any of this blocking the top of the proscenium?
The other way to get cheap tickets, and you'll see this walking through Times Square, is the TKTS booth. Going there in the morning, day of a show. They will tell you what shows they have available on their website, but you do have to line up. Could take an hour, but there are deals to be had there.
My other favorite for cheapy seats, Today Tix. Get the app, Today Tix, T-I-X. You can kind of look in advance. Now on that also, you won't be able to pick where you're sitting, but you can definitely get some decent seats at a decent price.
Now, unfortunately, something that is all too common, rip-off tickets on Broadway. Many people just don't know better. And the first thing I will say is I'd be careful about buying tickets from scalpers right outside the venue. You don't know if those seats are counterfeit or not. You don't know if that person's gonna go run away as soon as you buy the tickets. Another one that I'm hearing about lately is people who are waiting for tickets at the TKTS line. You're gonna be approached by somebody with a clipboard and they're gonna tell you that they have better tickets if you just talk to one of their associates, and you're really just talking to a ticket scalper who's probably gonna charge you more than you would pay at the TKTS booth. And I've been reading all about this lately from you guys. And the number one issue I see my viewers running into and getting mad about is going to a website like this. It'll have words like BroadwayTickets.com. It'll look like the official reseller, but when you actually go to the site, we have an example here, Aladdin on September 22nd, they have it starting at $104. What you always need to do instead of relying on a random Google search is go to the official box office site. We did just that, and Aladdin for the same night starts at $64.50, almost $40 cheaper. So I'm gonna repeat this, very important. Always start on the official site of the show, not some Broadway site that's gonna trick you to thinking they're the official reseller. Newbies to Broadway may be anxious about how to dress. What would you tell them?
I would tell them, we want everyone to feel welcome in a Broadway theater. You dress however you are comfortable. You are welcome here. The only thing I'm going to tell you though is we have a lot of air conditioning, so it might get cold, so you might want to consider having a jacket with you. But whatever you've got on, come on in. You're welcome here. Used to be people dressed up a lot on a Saturday night to see a show. Those days are over. Come be comfortable, come enjoy yourself. You are welcome here, whatever you got.
All right, Billy, another common issue, people arriving late. There's traffic, the subway breaks down. What do you do if you arrive late? And what time would you tell people they should arrive?
I'd say if you're picking up tickets at the box office, give yourself a half hour before the curtain so you feel comfortable. Get your tickets, you can come in, you can relax, you have time, stand outside if you want. There's gonna be a lot of people doing the same. Give yourself that time. If you've already got your tickets, give yourself 20 minutes, 15 minutes before the curtain to get in, get comfortable. If you want to use the restroom, feel free. As far as late seating, if you are late, well, we're not gonna start over, but they will seat you. Now, a lot of shows have very distinct, at the end of this number, that is a moment where we'll seat late seaters. At the end of this scene, that's when we'll seat people. You can't just go in because it is disruptive. So we've got that all very mapped out. It happens all the time. People get up during the show if they need to use a restroom. You're not going to be forbidden to do so. Do your best if you get there early to take care of all that stuff so you can just sit back and enjoy the show till the intermission or till it's over if you don't have an intermission.
And Billy, what about people who forget to turn off their cell phone?
If you can hear it, we can hear it. Don't do it. Turn off your cell phone. And while we're at it, don't think you can sneak pictures of the show or take videos. We see you. They see you. They will report it to an usher immediately and you will be ejected from the building. Don't do it. As far as singing along, don't do that. You paid good money to hear people that have been training their whole lives to do this job, not to hear each other. You're gonna really annoy the people around you too.
It's not a Taylor Swift concert.
It is not a sing-along.
I think a mistake that a lot of first-timers make is thinking that all Broadway shows are actually on the street of Broadway. Now, we are standing in front of Broadway, Winter Garden Theater, right there. One of only 2 shows that are still on Broadway, literally on the street, Broadway Theater being the other, and it got the nickname Broadway because at the turn of the 20th century, every single Broadway theater was on this street. Now, it's all around the theater district. Now today, Broadway actually refers to theaters that can hold 500 or more people. An off-Broadway show is 99 to 499 seats, and off-Broadway are 99 seats or lower.
Example, Little Shop of Horrors. That is a small show. It belongs in an off-Broadway venue. It doesn't belong in a big Broadway house. There are shows that are just too big to put in an off-Broadway house. The scope of the show determines determines where it should sit. Your price point is lower off Broadway, slightly, but some shows are appropriate for that venue as opposed to a bigger house. We just saw the Britney Spears Once Upon a One More Time in a monstrously big house, and they couldn't make it in a smaller house. They might have survived on Broadway. In an off-Broadway house, they might have run for years. It's impossible to say, but bigger house, more overhead.
All right, Billy, what about food and drink inside the theater? Can you bring your own food and drink? And if you don't, what can you expect price-wise inside?
You cannot bring your own food and drinks into the theater. Don't. People try to bring the rest of their pizza from John's with them. You can't bring it to your seat, folks. Eat before you get here or eat afterwards. Now, in the theater, yes, concessions. The owners of these theaters want to make money on beverages and cocktails and some snack, candy items. And it's going to be very, very expensive. But really, did you come here to eat and drink, or did you come here to see a show? I think you can go 2 hours without it. Now, there are shows where certain performers will not allow there to be ice in their drinks because they don't want to hear the clack, clack, clack of ice during the performance.
Billy, with so many options on Broadway, picking a show can be overwhelming. How do you tell a first-timer to narrow it down?
Well, now, again, it depends on what you want to see. If you've got a family, go see Lion King, go see Aladdin. We have plenty of really good family fare shows out there. If English is not your first language, something like Lion King is a very easy spectacle that you don't have to try to keep up with a plot. If you like movies, Back to the Future. It is a really great representation of the movie on the stage. If you're into something more challenging, go see a play. You might want to go see a drama. We have some wonderful moving theater that isn't musical fare. And a lot of long-standing things like Wicked, Book of Mormon. We have things that have tried and true and been around for years and years. And if you haven't seen them yet, well, there's a reason they're still here. People are loving them.
All right, putting you on the spot. What's your favorite all-time show? Can't say Back to the Future.
Favorite all-time show? Again, I'm going to say Little Shop of Horrors. That is a quality piece of theater. I love that show. I love when people get eaten by a plant.
All right, so a lot of people, they come to the city or they're visiting here and they don't just want to go to a Broadway show. They want to get a drink after, they want to get dinner after. Where are your top picks after all these years?
I do love going over by Schubert Alley on 45th Street to Junior's. Junior's is busy, it's big, but they've got great burgers. They have a brisket over potato pancakes to die, and they have killer cheesecake. I like going over to Junior's. Now, if you want to go someplace that maybe run into a Broadway performer that you just saw, I'd say Joe Allen's over on Restaurant Row on 46th Street. Joe Allen's is a place where Broadway folks will go after, and also upstairs from there is Bar Central, which is a nice place for a cocktail, where a lot of Broadway folks go hang out after a show, so you might just catch someone that you just saw on the stage.
Two of my favorites, one would be Adele's, which is halal food, just a few blocks actually from this theater right here. Now the line can get pretty long, but it's one of my favorite halal trucks in the entire city. And for food, I'm a big fan of a spot called Easy Paella and Tapas, actually in Hell's Kitchen, where you live. I think their paella and some of their Venezuelan fusion stuff is fantastic before or after a show.
And you can't go wrong at John's Pizza right across from the Majestic Theater on 44th Street. That is a quality pizza.
So Billy, actually right when we met you, there were a ton of autograph seekers waiting for the actors to come out. What is the respectful way to get a Broadway actor's autograph after a show?
Line up at our little barricades right there and have a pen ready with you, because you can't expect that they're going to have a marker. Have your playbill ready, have something you want them to sign ready. Don't ask them to sign pictures of themselves or merchandise that you plan to turn around and sell on eBay. They know that's what you want to do, so don't do it. They're not going to do it. Most folks will take a quick picture with you if they have a second. Not everyone does. At the end of the show, a lot of folks just need to get home. And not everyone always feels great at the end of the show, so you can't expect it. But most people will come out after and just have a quick moment with you. A lot of times, fans of the show will send us things backstage. They'll send things that they baked. We're not going to eat them. We can't say for sure who baked it and what's in it, so don't send food backstage. It's a lovely thing to do. We're going to end up throwing it out.
Billy, not only a Broadway veteran, but also a fellow YouTuber. Tell people about your channel.
That's right. I have my own personal channel. It's Billy Hipkins, The Also Ran, ALSORAN. I just talk on the daily most days about my New York life, either what's going on at my theater, what's going on at my apartment, what's going on with my 2 cats that drive me crazy and I love them to death. I just run my big mouth every day, and a lot of people seem to enjoy it.
Today, we'll be ranking the most famous New York eateries and restaurants that seem to be on every tourist's radar. We'll share the pros and cons of each and let you know which ones are actually worth your valuable time. Then we'll even name some less famous but local alternatives that you may not have heard of but need to. Here we go. Let's start the rankings, and the factors we'll look at are location, how iconic they are, and
value for your money. Starting with number 12, most famous hot dog in New York, Nathan's. Ranking this one last for a variety of reasons, but let's start with the pros. If you are a history buff, this is where the hot dog was invented. At the corner of Surf and Stillwell Avenue in Coney Island, Brooklyn, there's a nostalgia factor of eating this next to what was once America's most famous boardwalk. Sure, I guess the interior is kind of cool. It's very colorful and kitschy, so you could take a nice photo. The cons, well, you need to schlep almost an hour from Midtown for a hot dog. And the last time I went, it was about $5, which is way more than you'd pay for a random dirty water dog on the street in the city. And I don't think you're getting a better product. Seriously, I can't tell the difference between this and a Nathan's in Apopka, Florida. It's a hot dog. And don't get me started on the lines either. My advice here, if you want to knock a hot dog off your list, go to a local. My viewer's top pick is Billy's next to Central Park, so you can chat with someone who's done it for 30 years. Another favorite is Dan Rossi, the hot dog king who sets up in front of the Met and is a disabled veteran. And later on in the video, we mentioned another famous local hot dog spot that I like way more. Junior's. Now, in all fairness, this review is about going for their famous cheesecake. I haven't tried any of their other diner items. The pros. Well, the greatest pro of Junior's is its location for tourists. They have two locations in Midtown at 49th and 45th Streets. The original is in downtown Brooklyn and the only one I've ever visited, so it's easy to get to and perhaps the name recognition would cause you to eat there. They're also open till midnight on weekdays and 1 a.m. on weekends, which is helpful if you're a night owl. The cons. The Midtown locations are quite expensive. A simple 2-egg platter for breakfast is $13.95. But what we're here to talk about is the famous cheesecake. It's $9.25, almost $10 for a slice of cheesecake. Now, if this was the best cheesecake in New York City, I could maybe let it slide, but Junior's is not on that level. Being brutally honest, it's on about the same level as cheesecakes I'd eat at diners growing up in Jersey. I actually didn't know much about Junior's till I started this channel and saw how frequently tourists were mentioning dining there. I've tried it a few times and just don't get the hype. My all-time favorite New York cheesecake still belongs to Eileen's Special Cheesecake, and they sell a small version which is perfect for the on-the-go tourist. Nam Hua Tea Parlor. You may have walked by Doyer Street in Chinatown and seen a huge line, and they are the cause. The pros. They're Chinatown's oldest dim sum parlor, and being in business for over 100 years in New York really says something. The vibe inside honestly feels like you're on a movie set. The retro diner feel is pulled off so well. This could be the most photogenic spot on the list, and if that's all you're looking for, then you should eat a meal there. Which leads us to the cons, because while it passes the vibe check, the dim sum is just okay. Having dined at a lot of other dim sum spots all over Chinatown, I think you could do better. If I had to pick one similar spot in Chinatown instead, I'd walk a few blocks away to Ping's. It's more local, and I prefer the food quality and pricing. Joe's is the kind of spot people either love or hate, and I find myself somewhere in the middle. The pros. Joe's has become quite synonymous with a New York slice. The OG location on Carmine Street in the Village always has a crowd, but don't let that scare you because the line moves fast. A ton of celebrities have eaten there, and heck, Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker, used to work there. So that's pretty cool. If you were to just go to one spot for a slice in the city, you could do far worse. Just don't expect it to wow you. The cons. I think it's a bit overrated, and tourists really are obsessed with it. I can think of 10 other places off the top of my head where I'd rather go for a slice. The ingredients are fine, but it just doesn't stand out to me in any way. I find a lot of people that are in love with the spot like it because of nostalgia, or they just haven't tried many other pizzerias in the city, or heck, even in Greenwich Village. I'd send you to Bleecker Street Pizza a few blocks away for a slice over them. Joe's is stuck in time, and if that's what you're after, I say go for it, but I've just become too much of a pizza snob to really promote them that much. Katz's Deli, another spot that tourists are absolutely in love with, and many locals will fight you to the death if you dare slander them, but it's sitting on 8th on my list for a reason. The pros. Going to Katz's is a New York experience, albeit a rather touristy one these days. Walk in, grab your ticket, and then wait in a long line to get called up to the counter where you can even sample a little of your deli meat while your pastrami gets sliced up. You won't find this rite of passage anywhere else in New York, and for that, I think they're one of a kind.
Outside of the obvious that it's touristy and you may have to wait in a long line, we'll jump right to the pastrami sandwich. I don't love their rye bread, which really struggles to hold together those monstrous mounds of meat, and the quality has been hit or miss. Sometimes I eat there and I think, all right, this is a classic for a reason, and other times I'm not sure if it's a tourist trap or not, and like most of the famous eateries on the list, it's expensive. Very expensive. $27 for a sandwich, some would consider that outrageous. Yes, it can serve 2 people or 1 very hungry person, but with it already costing your kids college fund to visit New York these days, I can't justify it. I tell you to go to Sarge's Deli to pay about the same price in a more local spot that tastes better, or even David's Brisket House in Brooklyn if you want a budget pastrami option, as they offer different sizes, which is practically unheard of. There aren't a lot of bagel spots on this list, but if I had to think of one that keeps coming up with my tourist watching, it would be Essa Bagel, and with 3 Manhattan locations, they are quite accessible. The pros. Much like a Joe's, if I was to put a New York bagel in a time capsule and bury it for 1,000 years, Essa Bagel would be a great example. They've been around for nearly 50, these bad boys are doughy and thick, and they normally smother on enough cream cheese to pave a driveway. This is definitely a solid bagel. If you're in Midtown, it could be worth a stop. As for the cons, it's not the best bagel in New York. While it's better than a random deli or bodega find, they don't hold up against the city's heavyweights. Yes, they are humongous. I just don't think they have the crispy texture or soft interior that the cream of New York's bagel crop have. And the flagship location in Midtown is both on tourists and locals' radar. It was the longest I had to wait in line for a bagel, which as a New Yorker, you'd want to be in and out in a hurry. It's just not worth the hype for me. Peter Luger's is a bit of a controversial topic. Like Katz's, people either love it or love to hate it. It's either the best steakhouse they've ever been to or a complete waste of money. Let's dive into this iconic steakhouse, open since 1887. The pros. On the channel, I've only ever covered their lunchtime burger special, which made with prime grade chuck is actually fantastic, and I prefer it to the steak. Although it's not the main reason that people go there, you go to Peter Luger's to step back in time. You go for the experience, the no-nonsense yet humorous waiters, the interesting characters that eat there, and a very good porterhouse steak. The cons. No matter what time your reservation is, you'll probably be waiting 15 to 30 minutes for the table. The service is kind of gruff, it's expensive, although what did you expect from an institution that really hasn't changed much over the years? I'm no expert on fine dining or steaks, but I have visited most of the famous spots in New York, and Peter Luger's didn't even rank in my top 3, which is a theme we're seeing throughout this video, that a lot of the legendary spots tend to rest on their laurels while other restaurants have to be on a higher level just to get attention. New York Times food critic Pete Wells, in his famed 1-star review of them, wrote, "What gnaws at me every time I eat a Luger porterhouse is the realization that it's just another steak and far from the best New York has to offer." Magnolia Bakery. Sex and the City may have put them on the map and on the radar of many tourists, but they've been well known for almost 30 years now. This review isn't about their cupcakes, which I find to be mediocre, but their banana pudding. The pros. Magnolia Bakery is on a beautiful block in the West Village on Bleecker. Close enough for you to grab anything to go and wander some of the nicest streets in the city. I think it's still a good deal, $4.95 for a small order of their classic banana pudding, which somehow, after all these years, never disappoints. They have multiple flavors like red velvet, chocolate hazelnut, and more. Pro tip, order ahead on their website so you can skip the line. And maybe I'm biased because I used to live in the Village and frequented it, but this is a great pick. Cons. If you don't order in advance, the line can be a bit long depending on when you go. I never loved their cupcakes, and I've tried quite a few of them. I always liked Molly's Cupcakes, another Village institution, more, but New York has as many good cupcake places as it has good pizza spots, and I'm not docking them for this. Joe's Shanghai. If you asked any tourist or newcomer to New York to name just one soup dumpling spot, this would be the answer. And this isn't even my favorite soup dumpling in Chinatown, but it's a place that I think does somewhat live up to the hype. Pros. The new location is actually really nice. They moved in 2019 to their Bowery Street spot after spending nearly 30 years on Pell. It's bigger, so wait times are less, the service is fast once you get in, and $11.95 for 8 pork soup dumplings is a fair price. These actually taste really good too. The broth has a nice flavor, and the pork and crab are my favorite. My Chinese American friends Ben and Ming even put their seal of approval on the spot. As for the cons, if you like the communal style seating of the original, that no longer exists. There was something kind of charming about that experience. Even with more seats, you are likely to wait for a table here, and you'll probably be surrounded by 80 to 90% tourists. It's also cash only, which is a mild nuisance since they do have ATM machines inside. I've heard from others that outside of the soup dumplings, some of the other food choices are pretty mediocre. Giuliana's. This is in reference to Giuliana's in Dumbo, Brooklyn, which used to be the original Grimaldi's location and has since entered the lore of New York pizza rivalries. But we won't go into that story on this video. Spoiler, Giuliana's is way better, and this has become extremely popular with visitors to Dumbo after walking the Brooklyn Bridge. Pros, their cold oven pizza, plain and simple, is worth it. This is the original oven that Patsy Grimaldi made famous. They know what they're doing, and for a nice group lunch or dinner, this is a fantastic choice. Heck, I think their classic margarita is so good, it doesn't even need extra toppings. Cons. There tends to be a line to get in here, and you can only order a pie, which could make this prohibitive if you're not very hungry. A pie starts at $26, which is not on the cheap side. I wouldn't call this the best pizza in New York, but it is definitely one of the better ones out there, especially in an area where if you're a tourist, you'll likely be exploring anyway. I wouldn't stop you from going at all. Gray's Papaya. This is the cheapest stop in the video, and it's really won me over. Pros, there's only one Gray's Papaya left in the city, and with Papaya King shutting its doors, it's the last of a dying breed, the tropical hot dog shop. Gray's has gotten lots of attention because of their crazy price deals, like their old recession special. Currently, it's $3.25 for a single hot dog and $6.95 for 2 hot dogs and one of their signature tropical drinks. The hot dog won't change your life, but standing in a fine New York institution that's been around for over 50 years just might. We also recently covered their breakfast special, which is so cheap, it seems like it's straight out of the 90s. $3 for a coffee and a breakfast sandwich of egg, cheese, and either ham, bacon, or sausage. It could be Manhattan's cheapest breakfast deal. Cons, well, there's nowhere to sit, and the place is pretty bare bones, so it's nothing fancy. It's a hot dog, so temper your expectations for anything amazing. And while the breakfast is cheap, you'd probably get higher quality at your local bodega for an extra $1 or $2. Topping our list of famous eateries is Russ and Daughters. Open 110 years, this Lower East Side appetizing institution is a must visit. The pros. I don't know if I've ever had better Nova salmon or lox in the city. And you know how we talked about the experience of walking into Katz's? Well, going to Russ and Daughters is just as fun, grabbing a ticket and ordering from behind the counter. Well, $17 for a lox and cream cheese bagel is very pricey. This is the one place I would pay for it and not complain. They've managed to keep their standards high, plus Jewish appetizing stores of this nature are very hard to find these days. The location in the Lower East Side and the fact that they have a separate sit-down cafe around the corner makes this perfect for any visitor to New York who is willing to try something classic. Cons. Outside of the price and potential for lines, the biggest issue I have with Russ and Daughters are their bagels. Since they don't make them in-house, you're really not there for them. The star is the cured fish. I've even heard of some of my viewers getting some lox or other cured fish from Russ and Daughters and getting a bagel somewhere else to create the ultimate breakfast sandwich. The first impression many tourists get of New York is right here at the airport, and unfortunately, it's not always a pleasant one. Today, I'll share how to avoid getting ripped off and scammed minutes after you arrive, and then the best and cheapest ways to get from JFK to Midtown Manhattan, and a few other common airport mistakes you want to avoid that'll have you feeling like a local. Here we go. We're gonna start with 2 potential scams that tourists need to be aware of the second they get out of arrivals, and one of these is so sneaky that even some of my more experienced travelers could fall for it. You've seen it in the movies, hailing a taxi from the airport and riding into the city in style, but that's where you have to be careful. Here's how it works. You'll walk out here and somebody will approach you offering you a taxi ride. They might say taxi or Midtown. And they may even tell you you'll get a better price than anywhere else, but never accept these rides. Or
this could happen. This British couple was scammed $470. A man stood in the airport entrance, offered them a cab to their hotel, and Craig assumed it would go to the meter and cost 50 bucks. The pair later realized they should have been suspicious when he led them away to a private car park, away from the taxi rank and into a minibus driven by a second man. He asked them for the $20 for the parking fee, which they presumed would be taken off the bill, and told them they'd sort the fare when we get there. He started explaining to us that there were new toll fees for going between boroughs and over bridges. He then told me to take me to Manhattan. It was going to be $900. Now, I know what you're all thinking. If this happened to me, I would just get out of the car as soon as he told me that bad price. But keep this in mind, if your luggage is in the back, you're practically a hostage. This guy had an expensive engagement ring in his suitcase, and he really had no choice but to negotiate with the rogue driver. Now, if you do end up taking one of these unmarked taxis, best case scenario, you'll probably get a little bit ripped off. Worst case scenario, you'll pay a fortune or worse. And keep this in mind, even if you think you're getting a better deal, these cars are not insured. If anything goes wrong, you have nobody that you can complain to. Oh, welcome.
We're here for 5 days. I've watched everything.
We're actually making a video right now about arriving to the airport. If you don't mind, you feel free to be in the video.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. Imagine that you arrive in New York and the first person you see is me. An even sneakier scam is somebody will be holding up an iPad or a sign that says Uber. Now, maybe you're coming from overseas and you think in the US that Ubers are just waiting for you without calling them. These are not Ubers. They're also unlicensed cars. It's the same situation. You're gonna be going into a livery cab. They're gonna charge you whatever they want, and you have no insurance, no way to fight anything. So also avoid those. I have seen those fake Ubers as recently as this year at LaGuardia. If you're visiting New York from abroad, don't go to any of the exchange desks. You're gonna get an unfavorable rate. What are the legitimate ways to get a car into Manhattan? And the first and the most obvious is taking a yellow taxi. Now, if you're like my parents, you don't like messing with a smartphone, this is by far the easiest and simplest way to get into Midtown or anywhere else in New York. You just find the taxi sign right there. They will assign you a number and you just find the lane. There was like 10 people waiting. Actually, I don't think you would have waited very long at all for a taxi had you have taken this lane. The guy's really asking for a taxi right there. You see that? The guy behind me is literally trying to get people to not take the taxi line and just go. It still happens. As of late 2023, the flat fare is $70 or $75 if it's between 4 to 8 p.m. during weekdays and excluding holidays. Then we have tolls up to $6.94, a $2.50 congestion surcharge for trips that end in Manhattan south of 96th Street, which is likely where you'll be staying. So you're looking at about $95 to $100, including a $12 to $15 tip. This is not an inexpensive method to get into the city, but I do recommend it highly for groups or for people that are just not comfortable navigating public transit. By the way, if you have an issue with your driver, the good news is that you can contact something called 311. You can report unsafe driving or any other issue you run into. Just make sure you have your driver's name or identifying number from the taxi if you do run into any problems. And one more thing, all New York City taxis must have a working credit card reader. Ride shares. Now, this is my personal preferred method. When I'm at JFK Airport, normally I'm traveling with my wife and my son. I don't want to deal with public transit. And why I love ride shares at this airport is you have 3 different options that you can shop with and see what the best deal is. Important note, any terminal at JFK or any area airport is gonna have signs for either rideshare pickup, Uber, Lyft pickup, whatever it may be. Just follow the signs outside. I'm gonna use all 3 rideshare apps and I'm gonna check which one has the best price, the Marriott Marquis in Midtown. JFK Terminal 4. All right, we're gonna start with Uber. We have got a price of $89.93, which a little bit more than a taxi would be, and you would wait 1 minute, so you wouldn't have to deal with a taxi line. Next up, Lyft. Price would be, cheapest would be $91.95, so $2 more. And my personal favorite is Revel, where you ride completely electric cars. Use this code for 40% off your first 2 rides. $88.47. Although I will admit Revel does have the longest wait of 17 minutes. That's the issue with Revels, is they do tend to take a little bit longer than a Lyft or an Uber. Something else to keep in mind about ride shares is you are expected to tip 15 to 20%, depending on the experience that you had. So factor that in. Those costs though do include tolls. In this scenario, at this time of day, I believe a taxi would have saved you maybe $2 or $3. So they were all almost the same. Now when you call your ride share, you just have to cross the street, at least at Terminal 4, they're pretty similar, and find on your phone what letter and number corresponds to your driver. So if you got an Uber, it might say B1 or B2, and that's where your driver's gonna meet you. Just follow the signs. They make it really easy here. When you're arriving to New York City, make sure you have the exact address, east side or west side if you're in Manhattan. I'm gonna show you why. If you just put 109 42nd Street onto Uber, you would get the following choices. The first option is in Union City, New Jersey. So if you just tap that, you're heading to Jersey and you're probably spending $150. 109 East 42nd Street's by Bryant Park, and 109 West 42nd is a completely different address. So look very carefully at your address, and if it says New York, New York, that's Manhattan. If it says Brooklyn, New York, that is not Manhattan. Look how much that would cost you from here. $140. One other trick to keep in mind if you have some patience and the prices are surging on all the apps, if you wait 10 or 15 minutes, it could change. Of course, in that case, you might just be better off waiting in the taxi line so you can see how long the taxi line is. If it's not long, a lot of times that is a better play. Before we get to the lower cost options to get to Manhattan, I want to throw one more out there that I think is just not worth it, and that is the shared shuttle service. It's about $50, and how it works is they pack as many passengers as possible into a van and they just drive you all over Manhattan, dropping people off. Now, depending how lucky you are, it might be the same speed as a taxi or an Uber. If you're unlucky, you might be sitting in gridlock traffic as the shuttle goes from hotel to hotel, and if your hotel's last, it could take you 2 hours with traffic to get there. So I think in this case, the middle ground is not worth it. I'd either go expensive or cheap. By the way, for those who haven't been here since 2020, the New York City Airporter bus no longer operates. It was $19 into the city, not a thing anymore. If you are on an absolute budget, I'm gonna show you how to get to Midtown Manhattan using public transit. Now, something to keep in mind about both of these options is it's extra work. If you're flying in overnight, if it's your first time in the city, if you have a big group, I recommend a taxi or a ride share. But if you really want to save money, these two options are interesting. So the first step is to find signs for the air train in any terminal. And something to keep in mind here is that for the air train, you pay at the end. You do not pay for your ticket before boarding. It's free to ride around the terminals. That's how people transfer. All right, so a lot of flights have just arrived. We're following the signs here. Transit to the city. It's going to arrive on both sides. We're going to Jamaica Station. Next one's in 5 minutes. Hear what she said? Let the other passengers off first before you get on. That's subway courtesy as well. Remember what I said, if you have an overnight flight, you just don't want to deal with stressful situations. This can be a little stressful. The first thing to keep in mind when you get off the air train is you cannot use contactless payment. You have to have a Metro card or a special AirTrain card, which you normally get from the machine the second you get out.
Because the fee has been waived.
So this is interesting. I've heard stories about this. They waived the AirTrain fee. It's free today. Maybe because there's too many people. Well, they must have known I was coming. What's this? Guys, I'm sorry. The air train just went from free to back to $8.25 5 minutes later. I have no idea why. I learn something new every day. You could just get lucky and not pay. Unless it's your lucky day, like it just was for us, and they suddenly waive air train fees, You need to go to one of the machines and pay $8.25 to purchase an AirTrain pass, plus an extra $1 for the new card. Now, I would just buy a Metro card with it, which would be $9.25. Then you have two choices, one of which is the cheaper one to take the New York City subway for $2.75. Now, you could add $2.75 to your card there, pay $12 and be ready with one swipe, or watch my New York City subway survival guide video so you know how to use Omni contactless payment on your phone. I recommend that so much more than having to spend extra money to put more on the Metro card. Just tap and go for the subway. I'm gonna show you how to take the subway and why I honestly don't like it very much. Let's go. All right, so we are following the crowd, following signs for the subway. We're looking for the E-train. So while you are getting the best price, you are also walking a lot more. Now, because the AirTrain fee was waived, this would be the only option to buy a Metro card. And look at this line here. So hopefully you have contactless payment enabled on your phone. You can skip this line. All right, let's find the E-train heading for Manhattan. I'm gonna recommend if you take the subway, go as far down as you can away from the crowds. You'll get a better chance at a seat. The only advantage I see to the E-train is if your hotel is located close to one of the stops, it actually could be kind of useful. But if you're staying anywhere in Midtown, I just don't think this is the best option. Let me show you what to do when the train comes. It takes about 50 minutes to get to Midtown. As I said, go towards the end and you'll probably get a seat if you're fast. Instead of taking the subway, I prefer taking the Long Island Railroad, also known as the LIRR. So either if the AirTrain happens to be free, you leave, or you pay $8.25 plus the extra $1, $9.25 to exit off the machine. Now you can either buy a Long Island Railroad ticket from another machine, just a little bit down the corridor, or my pick, go to the MTA Train Time app and you would select Jamaica as the origin, and then either Grand Central or Penn Station as the destination. And there's one right now, there's one in 8 minutes. These are running constantly to 34th Street Penn Station. And you could buy a city ticket off peak for $5. That's it, $5 is what you would have to spend. So that's $2.25 more to get to Manhattan in double the speed and to be in more comfort, as I'm about to show you. If your train is between 6 and 8 in the morning on the LIRR heading to Manhattan, or 4 to 8 p.m. on the way back to JFK, you can buy what's called a peak city ticket, which is only $2 more at $7. So again, the total cost would be $14.25 in most situations to get to 34th Street, Penn Station, or 42nd Street, Grand Central. You've got two choices. We're doing a video about how to get from the airport to the city.
Okay, so you're gonna go under all other tickets, city tickets, off peak, and you're going to make it a pen.
Want to go? $5. Thank you. So the trick is, if you want to get, thank you for helping us, if you want to get a city ticket, you have to go all other tickets to get the discounted price. Friendly staff here too. Got on our phone that it's track 2, easy to find. No escalator, unfortunately. That kind of sucks. If you have a ton of luggage, I don't recommend the subway or the LIRR. If you have a reasonable amount of luggage, LIRR is fine. But you may find yourself taking some steps like this. And if you're unsure, you just look up. It says Penn Station, 3 minutes. It is so clear. I'm telling you, for $2.25, you're getting like $10 of a better experience. Very important, before boarding, make sure to activate your ticket, okay? I have to show you all a common mistake I see with the LIRR. I've had viewers, I believe, they get on this and they just go right to the ends. And look, this barely could even fit my small suitcase. In order to find the biggest luggage rack, you have to go to the middle areas of the train. This would fit a suitcase, I think almost double this size. Also, for that extra $2.25, look how much more space you get here. Oh, just cleaner, nicer. And this goes directly to Penn Station. Now, you're still gonna have to walk or possibly take another subway depending where your destination is in the city, so factor that in. A topic that I have been asked so many times that I've never actually addressed in a video is about SIM cards when you arrive to New York. Now, you do have the option to buy it at JFK, but I'm gonna tell you why I don't recommend that. Now, in the past, they did have SIM card machines. There's one here at Terminal 4, but it's not even operating. So your only option is to go to a kiosk, and I checked myself. I was just curious, what's the cheapest 7-day pass you have?
The cheapest is $45. You get 4 GB internet, unlimited phone, unlimited.
Okay, thank you. The cheapest 7-day SIM card was $45, which I think is too expensive. So your best bet is, one, check with your local carrier to see if they offer some kind of an international package. That might just be the easiest for you. You don't have to deal with SIM cards, going to a store. The other would be going on Amazon or any other retailer online before you leave. You can order US SIM cards in advance off of Amazon. And if you can't do any of those, I recommend going to the T-Mobile store, which is right across the street from Macy's by Herald Square in Midtown Manhattan. $15 to $30 is the range that I've been told. Do some research on that, but I definitely don't recommend buying it right away at JFK Airport because they do have pretty good Wi-Fi available. In fact, let me check if it works for me. Free JFK Wi-Fi, free unlimited Wi-Fi. You're now online. The free Wi-Fi, it's working. So if you're concerned about calling an Uber, I think you should be able to get service across this. Should we check? Let's check. If you do call an Uber and you're using the JFK Wi-Fi, I tested it. I lost it like right across the street. So I think you could hang out by the terminal and you could probably see your car more or less when it's about to pull up and then go. I think you could survive just on the terminal Wi-Fi. These smart carts are $6 to rent and you purchase them inside. Now, sometimes if you get lucky, somebody might just leave one out here and you might be able to use it for free. Not guaranteed to happen, so if you have a lot of luggage, this can actually be quite useful. Now, if you excuse me, I'm going to Union City, New Jersey.
The New York City subway system transits 4 million riders a day, and while it's not the world's easiest, my goal today is to break it down for first-timers so you avoid all the mistakes I've made in the past. Let's go. This is probably my most requested video ever because so many tourists are intimidated by the subway, but you shouldn't be. And at the end of this, I'm gonna take you through a sample ride, so pay close attention. Simply put, a single ride on the New York City subway costs $2.75. The MTA recently made a proposal to raise the subway cost to $2.90 a ride after Labor Day. Not official yet, but it would be the first fare increase in 4 years. Currently, a 7-day pass, $33, and a 30-day pass, $127. A big area that has given my viewers a lot of confusion is OmniPay. We are just gonna break this down entirely. So for most of my viewers watching, if you have a credit card with contactless payment or a credit card saved to a wallet on your Android or iOS device, you can use OmniPay. You just tap and go. You don't need any special app downloaded for this. The only time you would be required to have a Metro card anymore would be if you're taking the air train at JFK Airport. You would have to pay $8.25 plus a $1 fee for buying said Metro card. And essentially, you've just bought a $9.25 souvenir as far as I'm concerned, because you really don't need this. Now, I've heard that they may have contactless payment enabled at the air train in the near future, so by the time you watch this video, if it's in a few years, you might not even need that Metro card, period. Now, if you are traveling with a family or a small group, pay attention to this, because I get a lot of questions about how many swipes you can get with one card or how many taps you can get with one Omni device or credit card, and the answer is 3 extra. You can swipe once and then get 3 extra people on 3 different swipes before the card isn't available to be used anymore. So if you have more than 4 people, you either need 2 Metro cards or 2 different ways to pay with Omni Tap.
If you have small children, kids 44 inches or under ride for free. In fact, I didn't even realize this till I researched this video. I once saw a mom encourage her little daughter to run under the turnstile, and I thought, What are they teaching these kids today? And now I realize because she's free.
Let's talk unlimited cards and if you should get a 7-day unlimited pass. Now this is kind of a tricky topic. Omni offers a 7-day unlimited pass through their contactless payment. It's called fare capping. You can only do it on one device or card. Now if you tap 12 times with any Omni payment, you automatically get the rest of the rides for the week free, which sounds pretty straightforward, but this only works from Monday at 12 a.m. to Sunday at 11:59 p.m., which means if you're a tourist and you're arriving on a Thursday and you're gonna be using the subway like crazy and you want the unlimited, Omni's probably not gonna make sense for you. So the bottom line is, unless your trip fully lines up with a Monday to a Sunday, if you need to go unlimited, buy separate cards for each member of your group. And special shout out to one of my viewers, Mark Finley, for pointing out how Omni Unlimited really isn't that great for tourists. Probably the best piece of advice I can give you on this video is to have Google Maps downloaded on your phone. Having a smartphone in general in this city is gonna make transportation 99% easier. Google Maps will tell you exactly what exit to take when you get to a new station. And something in the past that I've recommended is City Mapper. I don't use City Mapper as much anymore because I now live at a local station, and City Mapper doesn't tell me on weekends when subways are skipping my stop, and that's somewhere where Google Maps is a lot stronger. So honestly, between the two, I use Google Maps a lot more now, and you have to have that on your phone. It's just gonna save you so much hassle here. Whenever you're looking for a specific subway station, make sure that it is the exact one that you need. And I can't illustrate this point any better. We were filming this video and we had a lost tourist approach us, and he thought that he was at the Spring Street 6 station. He was actually at the Spring Street CE station. So you have to not only know the name of your station, but what line you're taking. And don't get me started on the 4 23rd Street stations or the 3 different Canal Street options. Same thing if you're meeting somebody, if you're meeting a friend at any station. Don't say I'm meeting at Canal, say I'm meeting at the 6 train at Canal. Now, if you're new to New York City, you have to realize that we have local and express trains. Local go to every single station, where express is gonna skip the local stops and go a little bit more quickly to some of the bigger stations. And some of the most common express stops you'll see all over the city: 59th, 42nd, 34th, and 14th Streets. Here's a little tip for you. If you see people running down the stairs, they probably see that the subway just arrived. So if you're in a rush, you might want to run too. For my tourists watching or spending most of their trip in Manhattan, when you look at the subway signs here, you're generally gonna see either uptown, meaning heading for Harlem, downtown, heading for Financial District, and then you'll see another destination of Queens. But you really have to pay attention to the uptown and the downtown when you're looking at this. Every single station in the city has a board that tells you the timetables, and they are very accurate. So when I first moved to New York, this was not a thing at every station. Had to check by phone. Don't even need your phone to know when your train is coming and which side it's coming on as well. Let's discuss entering and exiting stations, and this could be a little bit tricky if you're not overwhelmed already. One thing to look for is many smaller stations have these globes here. That's how you know a subway entrance is there. Some huge stations you can just tell by the exterior, but any of the smaller ones, this is your clue from far away. Now this is where sometimes even New Yorkers will mess up if they race into a station without checking. If the sign for the subway only says uptown, it's usually a smaller local station, you'll see this. You can only enter in one direction, meaning if you enter in the downtown spot and you want to go uptown, you have a few options. 1, cut your losses, exit, cross the street, swipe again. 2, take the subway one stop and hope that the next station has an underpass or a way to connect going the opposite direction. 3, you could ask the station attendant nicely to let you go. There's one other thing you could see. It might say downtown, uptown, and underpass, meaning you can go to the downtown side and there's gonna be a staircase leading to the uptown side. Now in this example here, when it doesn't say downtown, uptown, or underpass, it means that you can go both uptown and downtown from this 57th Street station. Another tip for you is that these subway stations are super, super hot in the summer. So if you don't have to spend that much time down here, the timetables on Google Maps are very accurate, so maybe at about the 5-minute mark, I would consider heading in because I have had some awful experiences. Heat of the summer, humidity, save time, stay above ground as long as possible. Let's talk transferring within stations. Now, in almost every instance, transferring is free inside of a station. This is not like Tokyo where you have to swipe again and pay twice. You can transfer multiple times within the subway system and not have to pay more than $2.75. We're gonna talk some safety tips right now, and the zebra board, also known as the indication board behind me, is a big one. Let's say you're riding the subway by yourself late at night. You wanna make sure you're sitting in the same car as the conductor. Find this indication board. That is where the conductor will be because they always point at it when they stop at a station. An added bonus with this, you know where the conductor is if you have questions like, is this train going to a certain spot? Very useful. When the train comes, don't stand in front of the door for your own safety because you're gonna get some angry New Yorkers cursing at you for blocking their path. Stand back, let them go, and then board the subway. When you're riding on any subway car, don't make eye contact with strangers. Like the New York City subway, it's not the friendliest place. Just mind your own business and you should be okay. If you do witness erratic behavior, you'll see a lot of other New Yorkers doing this. At the next station, exit and go to another subway car. I've even had to do this a handful of times in my 12 years living in the city. Here's one you learn the hard way. If you ever board a subway car and it's completely empty, there's probably a reason for it. You'll find out why. I literally saw somebody doing this today on my way to this shoot. Don't stop in the middle of a busy path like this to check your subway directions. Now, luckily no one's behind me right now, but this lady actually caused a little bit of a traffic jam as everybody had to swerve around her. For your own safety, to try not to get run over or cursed at, don't do that. I get a lot of questions about accessibility and New York City. I hate to say it, but the New York City subway needs a lot of work when it comes to being handicap accessible. So for example, in Manhattan, only 36 of 147 stations are wheelchair accessible. And when it comes to elevators, most major stations have them, but they smell, well, I can't think of the right word. Use your imagination. They smell terrible. And now we're gonna put all this knowledge to the test. We're gonna do a sample ride from here in Greenwich Village, uptown to Carnegie Diner and Cafe. Follow along. I always would recommend picking the route that does not have any transfers, especially if you're new here. We're gonna take the F train. We found the right entrance, West 4th, Washington Square, looking for the F train. We're not looking for the orange line, we're just looking for the F to make sure that letter is here. It is here, and we're gonna go down. We got two choices here, Uptown, Queens, F. So we're gonna go this way. The other side says downtown. We're not going downtown. And don't get confused by this downtown Brooklyn ACE stuff. That's to go to the other side. Stick to your letters. Always follow the signs with your letter. Another reminder, Uptown, F train, here. And just in case you missed it the last 3 times, F train, this direction, FM, BD on the left, that's express. We're looking for the local train. This train just passed, F and the M. This is the M train. We don't want this one. Don't just hop onto the first train you see. Make sure it's the one you actually trying to take. We have another Uptown Express train on the other track, also not taking that. Remember, we are not looking for the color, we are looking for the exact letter here, F. Now this is telling me the next train is now 12:57, and we look up at the board, it's confirming it. Remember what I said, all the subway stations now have boards that tell you pretty accurate timetables. You look up, it points in the direction of the F train. This side, arriving now. F train's here, let the people exit. They always announce the next stop. They just said it's 14th Street, so we know that it's heading uptown. You can also check up there to make sure you're going in the right direction by the different stops listed. We made it to 57th Street. Now we have to find the right exit. We're looking for 6th Ave and 57th. Most of the time, if you exit at the wrong place, it's not a big deal. You're still gonna be pretty close to where you have to be, but just save yourself the trouble. And there it is, across the street. Visiting New York can be intimidating for first-timers, and there's certain unspoken rules and customs that newbies tend to break, many times without realizing it. In this video, we'll share all of them and even a few bonuses so your next trip here is free from any embarrassing or possibly expensive mistakes. As a tourist, you are far more likely to get hit by a bike than you are by a car. In my 13 years living in New York, I have never come close to being hit by a car, and 2 or 3 times I almost got hit by a bike. And I wasn't even walking in the bike lane. Always be aware of where the bike lanes are in the city because the cyclists already have a chip on their shoulder for so many cars and pedestrians ignoring this. If you stand here and try to take a photo or just don't pay attention to it, best case scenario, you're gonna get a warm New York City welcome and learn a few new curse words. Worst case scenario, you are gonna get crashed into and it is gonna be very painful. And this video is not sponsored by any kind of travel insurance, so you just don't wanna get into that. So sometimes it's a little bit tricky to find, but the easiest way to find the bike lane is to look down like this and you can see it, or better yet, see where all the cyclists are heading. But never ever stand in the middle of this. This drives locals crazier than anything and is one of the main reasons they love to avoid the Times Square area, and that's traffic flow and how to walk properly on a congested city street. Now this actually takes a little bit of effort if, let's say, you have 4 people in your group. What you don't want to do is walk all 4 across because you are going to be stopping all the people behind you from walking around. You need to be in groups of 2 maximum. And right now, Times Square is not that busy because it's February, but if you're here during a peak period, you will understand exactly what I mean. And this advice goes for all of New York. And what you never ever want to do is stop in the middle of the sidewalk to take a photo or to look for directions. That is the quickest way to get New Yorkers angry at you. And later on in this video, we're going to talk about some similar concepts underground on the subway. I'm going to share a firsthand experience that occurred about a month ago when I went to MJ the Musical, and this is about Broadway etiquette. Now, I was surrounded by many tourists, and halfway through the show, there were about 2 teens sitting next to Adriana and I, and they started to play with their phones in the middle of the show. And let me tell you, when it's super dark in a theater and somebody's looking at their phone, it is completely distracting and disrespectful. And shame on those parents for not realizing what was going on. The big unspoken rule here is do not play with your phone during a Broadway show. And if you're a parent, make sure that your children have the attention span to sit through an entire performance or find out if there's an intermission or not to avoid situations like that. And if you need even more Broadway tips and tricks, check out the video we shot with a Broadway insider giving you the lowdown. Carmine's Fine Italian Dining, which brings me to tipping, which is something that so many tourists get frustrated with visiting New York. It is such a source of complaint that I've even dedicated an entire video to this foreign American concept of tipping. But the #1 spot I hear about tourists having problems is not even at restaurants, it's at bars, because you are dealing directly with the bartender, and if you do not leave a tip for your drink, you're gonna hear about it. My general rule of thumb is tip $1 per drink, some say $2 per cocktail. The bartender will be much nicer to you as well. A simple rule for restaurants, tip 20% of the pre-tax total on the bill, assuming your service was good enough. You know, look, I understand the frustration out there because in many other countries, servers are paid living wages, but in the United States, they live off of tips. And while I might not personally be a fan of it, I still adhere to it because when you visit another city, another country, you have to do as the locals do. Something brand new in New York, if you are ordering Uber Eats or DoorDash delivery to your hotel, they have pretty much cut out tipping. This is a recent change where they've just raised fees. Now they have a screen where they only suggest a $1, $2, or $3 tip after the order has been delivered. And I know many New Yorkers now who just don't tip anymore on these apps because the drivers are getting $30 an hour and the fees, well, they've gone up. The weather, every New Yorker's favorite topic. Take it from me as somebody that films outdoors all the time and relies on weather reports daily to know when to film. The weather in New York City is extremely volatile. First of all, Manhattan, you are never far from the water, so you could catch yourself walking on a street that just has a crazy amount of wind and it'll feel 10 to 15 degrees cooler. So I'd say between November even to April, sometimes even into May, having a light jacket with you, a sweater, always a good idea. Another thing is the rain. I try my hardest not to film when it's raining. Even last week, at the last minute, rain popped up into the forecast and we had some of it for about 2 to 3 hours and I was completely unprepared. Having an umbrella with you at all times, never a bad idea. An unspoken rule that every New Yorker knows so well, many times from bad experiences, is never accept anything when you're walking, especially in Midtown Manhattan. This is how the majority of the scams that we've covered on this channel occur. Don't say yes to a monk handing you a bracelet, to somebody handing you a CD, to a pamphlet, to somebody holding a clipboard. Just keep your eyes locked ahead, avert your gaze. That's the best advice I can give anybody in New York. And if you need even more advice on avoiding scams in the city, watch the whole video we have dedicated to it. Supporting local businesses. I know how easy it is when you travel to go to franchises like Dunkin' Donuts behind me, to grab a coffee when you're in a rush, rather than going to one of the local street carts and getting a coffee from a vendor that really relies on the income more. Being a New Yorker, and I think visiting New York, is all about supporting small local businesses like that, and I encourage you to go out of your way to do so. And supporting local businesses is definitely something that'll really make your trip to New York a lot more memorable. In some cultures, it's just commonplace for locals to stare at you. Well, in New York, it is the complete opposite. Minding your own business is something that native New Yorkers especially know all about. So if you see somebody acting erratic, doing weird things, don't stare, don't point at them, just don't get involved. Because if you look at somebody, it could be a trigger for a confrontation, or worse, a signal that you even want to fight. So make sure that you do not stare at strangers here, and don't get involved in conflict here unless you absolutely have no other choice. And don't take a picture with a Hulk and expect him to not charge you 20 bucks for it. Don't take an Uber or a taxi when you can take the subway to get there faster. And don't take the subway when it's quicker and easier to walk. This unspoken rule is broken all the time. Now, I would say if you're considering taking an Uber or a taxi between the hours of 7:30 a.m. to 8 p.m., it's almost always faster to take the subway inside of Manhattan, and a lot cheaper. Let me give you a good example. If I'm at Grand Central and I want to get down to Battery Park, you could take the Express 405 and get there in 13 minutes, 5 stops. That same Uber ride is going to take you 25 minutes, probably more with traffic, and cost you $30 to $40 versus the $2.90 you would pay taking the subway. Manhattan is so well connected by subway that this example holds true in almost any way you could think of between Midtown to Lower Manhattan. And when it comes to walking during peak hours when traffic is terrible, don't even think about hailing a taxi. And even sometimes waiting for the subway could be 10 minutes or more. If it's crowded, walking down the steps is all gonna eat up your time. And if you could just walk 15 to 20 minutes, I always advise walking, unless the weather's bad. And since you're gonna be riding the subway underground, there's some unspoken rules we definitely have to go over. Let me repeat this for the 10th time on the channel. You do not need to buy a Metro card anymore. It is now official. Even at JFK Airport, the AirTrain supports OmniPay, which is contactless payment from your phone or even from a card with a chip. Now, my wife's brother was visiting from Mexico recently, and he was asking me all about this, and I said, as long as you have this enabled in any way, shape, or form, a Metro card is completely useless to you right now. All you need to do is tap your phone or tap your card and you're in. Buying a Metro card, I think it's just an extra step right now. Look, you don't need a Metro card. The Metro card machines even tell you you don't need a Metro card anymore. Right from the horse's mouth, okay? So when you're going up an escalator in a subway station in the city, always stay to the right, because if people are in a rush, they're late for a meeting, they're late for court, I don't know what, they want this lane here open. Do not stand to the left unless you are walking quickly. Another unspoken rule broken all the time, and it's really just courtesy, is when people are getting out of the subway, do not block the doors. Stand to the side, let them exit, and then go in. And you would be surprised how often I see people breaking this simple rule, even locals. The subway intercom is likely gonna sound like a toddler babbling right when you need it most, or the train track noise like this is gonna make it impossible to hear what the next stop is. Always be paying attention to how many stops you have left if you don't know the city well. Even a few weeks ago, I missed my stop because I zoned out. It happens to everybody. Don't rely on the conductor's voice unless it's clear like that. If the subway is super crowded during rush hour, one advanced tactic is what I'll call pre-walking, is when your station is approaching, standing up and moving towards the door. Because if you wait till the last second, you could run into a sea of people flooding onto the train right as you want to get out. So if you have the time, get up right as your stop is approaching on a busy, busy train. Respecting neighborhoods, and this goes beyond the obvious, like not littering. I'm also talking about your volume and your noise if you're going out at night and going to bars. Now, I used to live at that apartment right there in Greenwich Village for almost a decade, and I can tell you that on weekends, the volume from outside was enough to wake you up unless you had a fan or white noise going, and people would sometimes even open up our garbage area to use the bathroom. That being said, always paying attention when you're out and not being super noisy on the street late at night is going to be very considerate of you when there's people sleeping who have to go to work the next day. Another unspoken rule is if you are going to celebrity houses or even places where celebrities used to live, like Richard Gere's old townhouse behind me, which sold for over $10 million in 2007. If you're a huge Richard Gere fan, you can take a photo of it, that's fine, but don't peer into the windows, don't open the gate, don't stand on their stoops. Realize that people live here and be respectful of that. Richard Gere lived there, Sandra Bullock, Anne Wintour from Vogue is somewhere here. I lived on the poor side of the street. Let's talk fast serve restaurant etiquette, and I'm actually standing in front of my old deli here in the village. If you go to a deli, a bodega, a pizza spot, and there's a long line, make sure you know your order before you get to the front. Step out of line if you have to, because if you're gonna be asking the worker 50 questions while there's 30 hungry construction workers behind you, you're gonna be in for some trouble. That is one thing, respecting people's time. If it's busy, check the menu first. I'm gonna throw one more bonus tip out there. If you're at a small, casual eatery, let's give an example, Fuzhou Cuisine in Chinatown. They don't have a ton of tables and they're always super busy. What you don't wanna do is sit there after your meal for 20 minutes just chatting if people are waiting for tables. If you're at a finer dining establishment, take your time. They'll let you know if they need the table. But if you're at a small, casual place, see if people are waiting for tables and don't sit there and chat for 30 minutes after. And this is something that goes against a lot of cultures. I know even my wife in Mexico loves to do what's called sobremesa after her meal, sit there and chat. And you can't do it at all New York eateries, especially popular ones where people need the tables. If you're not from the US, especially Latin America or Europe, listen closely. A lot of tourists run into issues with ordering alcohol. Now, one mistake they make is not bringing ID with them if they look anything under 30. I even sometimes get ID'd. If you go to a restaurant and you order a beer, have either your local ID with you or your passport, just in case. And that advice goes for bars and clubs. Almost every bar in the city, IDs, no matter how old you look. Now, something cool about New York versus where I grew up in northern New Jersey is you can buy beer at CVS, you can buy beer at bodegas, you can buy beer at delis. And at a lot of them, you can even buy single beers from a 6-pack, which isn't that common everywhere else in the US.